Hey guys, how you doing? I've literally only had coffee today. Are we actually moving? Are we actually going? Yeah, we are. All right, good. Good stuff. Good stuff. Just getting ready for my flight. That's basically what I did today. Got ready for my flight. Did my laundry. Did some around the house sort of stuff. Just as a reminder, no show tomorrow. Right? No show tomorrow. No show Monday. I'm heading out to Manitoba to my uncle's funeral. It's actually going to be a big like family reunion event. So I've got to make myself look as nice as possible and presentable as nice as possible. In a way, it's going to be really beautiful to be out and see all my family. Like I'm talking about family I haven't seen in decades. Like cousins and uncles and aunts and all this. But I'm really going to have to pull back on like, I'm just not going to give my opinion on many things, right? Which is, hey Eric, how you doing, bud? Hope you're feeling good. This is something I learned when I went out to the East Coast with my siblings. It's like, people are not prepared at all to handle even the like mildest, gentlest facts of the reality of what's going on in the world. Like, really, we're dealing like, and it was a big learning experience because it was my family to experience it. That like, when your whole life is wake up, get in your car, drive to work your job, get in your car, drive home, and then spend the evening watching CNN. Like you're in a bubble. Like you're in a bubble of information and you have a very warped view of what the world looks like. I took a quick look, Eric, on that channel. Hey Rusty, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. Just to show people quickly, this fellow here is what Eric's talking about. Angelo Guiliano. I'm surprised his channel's up. I gotta be honest with you. Like, chances are really good that he's being demonetized fairly regularly because he's talking about. He's essentially talking about what I'm talking about, right? But he's really diving into the Ukrainian Zelensky's corruption revealed, right? Why the Pope is meeting with who makes the U.S. superpower? There was a series Nazi control Zelensky, right? Like. You guys have heard me talk about this kind of stuff, but here's this fellow who seems to be doing deeper dives into this specific issue, right? So good for Eric to bring this fellow up. I'm going to take a look at more of his videos because I think there's great information here. I mean, you can see he's got an interview here with, I forget the name of this fellow here. Oh, Bram Baratic, but I recognize this guy's face. This guy's a great one. And so if this guy's getting interviews with this, you know what's really encouraging me looking at this? Like this guy's got 2.5 subscribers, right? Like I should start reaching out. I should start reaching out to more kind of leftist voices. I should try to get more interviews is what I should do. If a guy like this can get an interview with a fellow like this, right? Which isn't to discount what he's doing or anything. Like I'm not trying to, but I think I'm not trying to tear him down. I'm trying to elevate my own expectation of my own self, right? Does he actually have the Donbass RT documentary on this channel? I'd be very, very surprised if that's the case. Should I? What should I look up? Should I search his channel here, Eric? Because I would love to find that documentary again. I was very heartbroken when I couldn't get that documentary. I'd love to have that documentary. Like it's something that I would love to have so that I could like literally show it to people, right? But it's just something that slipped through my fingers in the shuffle. So should I search something? I really do want to find this out. I mean, I know it was called part 1 was called The Airport. And Anyway, but if you can find that for me and like really like just direct link that, because again, like YouTube was scrubbing the shit out of that documentary specifically. I'm more or less of the opinion that the reason why RT gets removed from YouTube and all of the social media platforms is because of that documentary. Like, it's so illuminating, it's so specific, like it's got firsthand eyewitness, it's got footage. Like, if you watch that documentary and go, that's just Russian propaganda, then you're stupid. Like, there's nothing else to say to you, right? Like, you're just a stupid person. And it would be really, really nice to just have that specific link. That would be great. I have it on my watch later. I can share it. Please, please look into these. In fact, if you have access to that documentary, guys, can you put it in resources? Right? Can you put that in resources? I'm just going to quickly delete this message just because that's not what this is for. Like, resources in the Discord is for these sorts of things. These kind of core source documents that are counter-narrative, that are extremely useful, that are loaded with evidence, right? That are loaded with direct first-hand accounts. Something that we can point to and be like, hello, right? And so that's going to be the key to a lot of stuff. And I'm so glad that you guys are managing to dredge up that RT documentary, because I let it slip through my fingers is what happened, and I wish I hadn't have. So amazing. Yes, this is it. Is this on YouTube? Oh man, I'm gonna try to pull this off and off of YouTube. It's not gonna stay on YouTube for much longer, right? Like, what I need to get is I just need to pull these documentaries off of the internet and just have them, because they're not going to stay longer. They're not going to stay for very long, right? And in fact, I feel a bit nervous even talking about them right now, because it's like, But honestly, like what is going to actually happen is that once the fervor is over, like once the war is ended, right? Once the war is ended, and the war will end, right? And once the war, and the reason why the war will end is because Russia's not interested in doing what America did to Afghanistan and Iraq, which is just be a permanent occupying force, right? Russia never wanted to be an occupying force. If they wanted that, there's so many other things they could have done. They would have acted very differently. They want to peel the Donbass region, and maybe other regions. We'll see. Time will tell. But the Russians themselves, like the Russian people themselves, are like, yeah, go in there, get your objectives done, win this war, right? And honestly, if Putin can reach a diplomatic settlement, he'll be very popular in Russia. Like, the Russian citizens themselves will consider him very popular if that occurs. So that's what he wants. That's what the Russians want. It's what that's what I feel like the bulk of Ukrainians want, excluding the Nazis. And now you're even getting Biden saying it, right? So like Joe Biden is saying it. Like, we're just waiting. We're waiting now. I've seen things saying that like other countries, like Bulgaria, has said no, we're not sending anything else, right? So that there's this winding down that's clearly happening, and I think that if you wanted to say what was the turning point for this narrative, the turning point was the surrender at Mariupol, right? Like, at the same time that the surrender at Mariupol occurs, that's when the whole Bucha genocide narrative was going on, right? Where they were like, oh, there was a genocide at Bucha, oh my God, and all the leftists were like, nah, probably not, bro. But we spent all our energy talking about Bucha instead of talking about the Nazi surrender at Mariupol, and it didn't penetrate into the mainstream narrative. But so now, like, the Nazis aren't fighting anymore because they've surrendered, right? There's going to be big trials. It's up to Putin to decide where to have those trials. If he's wise, he'll have those trials in the Donbass themselves. Like, after the diplomatic solution is reached, they will hold those trials. And It's just kind of how it's all going to unfold. And so now the question for me is what happens to Ukraine after, right? And the descent into pretty obviously neo-fascism and Nazism. Like they don't really have another path, right? They've banned any opposition party, right? Like leaving the Nazis intact. They can't, they literally, like just by the facts, can't go anywhere else structurally. So we'll see how that all unfolds over time. Ukraine is going to continue to be a hotbed, for sure. It's still the most corrupt nation on the continent. It's still extremely corrupt. It's still has an entrenched oligarch system, an oligarch system that has proven, without a shadow of a doubt, that it's completely willing to turn to fascism in order to defend itself. In many ways, I take a look at what happened in Ukraine, and I'm like, that's going to be how it works here too, right? That the way the system collapses and the way the system corrupts itself and the way the ruling class acts and responds to the populace is going to be very similar here as it was in Ukraine. That the oligarchs will lose popular support. They'll lose support from the institutions. People will begin turning against them. And so they'll reach out to the people who will work with them, and that's Nazi groups. And we know who these Nazis are here in Canada, right? And so just in the same way that the Nazis got integrated into the military here, in Ukraine rather, we should expect a similar thing to occur here as our system begins to degrade and as the populace turns against it. And as the ruling class reaches out to those who will do their bidding, which are always Nazis, right? So, or those who they feel will do their bidding. Although the dark truth of what it is to work with Nazis is that you never work with Nazis, right? You're not using the Nazis are working for you, or are working for themselves, right? You don't work for you don't use the Nazis use you. That's the truth of it. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are willing to do violence. And so if you two eventually come to a head with one another, well, who are you going to turn to? They're the ones that are killing people on your behalf, right? So that's how Nazis seize power. They don't negotiate it, they take it. And if you empower them, arm them, train them, enrich them, well, what do you think is going to happen? Right? You're not a partner with Nazis, right? They're just using you to facilitate their own ends, which is power and destruction and conflagration. That's their whole goal. And they're open about it. They tell you about it. Hey, Isaac, how you doing? And those oligarchs are connected to the Democrats, especially Biden. I mean, the oligarchs in America are both, it's on both sides. Like there's only one party in America, and it's the oligarch party, right? Like, just because there are different flavors, just because there's different spices, just because there's different sections of the working class in different parties doesn't mean that they're opposed to one another. Like, I understand why people are abandoning the Democratic Party, like, and they should, just like we abandoned the NDP and the Liberals here in Ontario. Like, we should, absolutely. Let's face the dark heart of it. And Emily, how you doing? Good to see. I haven't seen you around quite a bit. I hope you're doing well out there. I'm liking your TikTok videos, by the way. Those are beautiful stuff. Beautiful stuff. Anemone is our local scholar and artist. So I'm glad to see that you're in the chat today. While I got more of you in here, just a reminder, guys, I'm not here tomorrow, and I'm not here on Monday. I'm out in Manitoba for my uncle's funeral. So, okay, let's get in. First of all, I just always love to point out how stupid Elon Musk actually is. So what's the plan? Build 1,000+ starships to transport life to Mars. Basically, very modern Noah's Ark. This is not any different than Jesus is coming back in a great rapture, right? Like this kind of thinking is no different than that kind of absurdist, like, we just gotta wait for the end times are upon us, and so God will swipe his hand across the world, right? It's magical thinking, right? It's stupid. Like, there's just no way to describe something like this. Build 1,000+ stars. Like, it is like the ending of Don't Look Up, right? It's just like the ending of like, oh, everything's gonna be great. We'll just let the comet hit Earth, right? And that'll be fine. And then they all get in their fucking starships and bounce, right? And then what happens? They get fucking destroyed because space is destructive. It's not a nice thing, right? Today I was listening to a panel that they had a professor from Sweden and discussing issue over Ukraine. They're simply talking about cold hard facts. Yeah, well, and oh yes, this I didn't actually get to the end of my thought on that, which is that once the peace is done and once the Americans pull out and stop spending resources on bamboozling the populace, well then the only people who will be talking about it are the people who actually care about what the truth was, right? And that's when it will begin penetrating, right? And honestly, once the Nazism gets impossible to ignore, like once Zelensky's out, you know, like once they get rid of Zelensky and somebody else comes in, the Nazi salutes in Parliament. Get ready for it, right? It's coming. So here was an article that comes out of Abacus Data. Millions of Canadians lack trust in government and news media. I'm surprised that this number is so low. Much of the information we receive from news organizations is false, 44%. I'm blown away that it's this low. Explains a lot, if you ask me. Explains a lot, right? Official government accounts of events can't be trusted, 52%. Again, I'm surprised it's this low. Like I'm literally expecting like 70 to 80% is what I was expecting to see. To see these extremely low numbers, and I consider these to be extremely low, is a bit of an eye opener for me, right? That this means that when you're speaking to someone, you've basically got a 50-50 chance of them being a gullible rube. Like that's just the truth. Like if you are genuinely going to stand in front of me and tell me that you think that the news or the government are credible at all, like on a scale from 1 to 10, if your number's higher than 0, I just don't, like, I can't take you seriously as a person. I don't know how you can look at the world and how you can look at the garbage that's coming out of our news organizations and our government certainly, and actually say like, yeah, I trust this. That's staggering to me. Let's dig a little deeper. Almost half of those interviewed found themselves agreeing with the statement. Much of the information we received from news organizations is false. While this means a majority of Canadians have some trust in news organizations, more than 13 million adults, extrapolating 44% to an adult population of 29.5 million, don't. Those with no of course, we're going to go after those with no education, right? Those with no post-secondary education, Alberta residents, and those on the right show greater mistrust. First of all, that's pretty ubiquitous generally. Right, those on the right generally have a mistrust of organization, of government and news organizations in the first place. Right, it's well, I want my small government. I'll get your government hands off my Medicare. Right, that kind of thing. But by far the biggest differences are visible when we look at party affinity. The vast majority of People's Party supporters don't trust news organizations, and a smaller majority, 59% of conservative voters, feel the same way. So, who's the gullible people in the conversation? The gullible people are the liberals. The liberal voters are the gullible people in the conversation. But we got to call it for what it is. If you genuinely think that your news organizations are telling you the truth about what's going on, like 68% of liberals do and 61% of NDP voters do, you're gullible. Like, I have a bridge to sell you. You're fucking gullible. And it's shocking to see that this number is this high, that there are majorities in the NDP and the Liberals. It's explaining what's going on in terms of why are people still supporting the federal Liberals and the NDP. It's because people are gullible. They don't recognize that the Liberal Party has become an extreme far-right party, way further to the right than the Conservatives, but in huge ways, huge and massive ways. The Liberals are a much farther right party than the Conservatives are at this point, which is terrifying to think about because the Conservatives, like, these are the guys that are dog whistling to the Nazis in their parties, right? These are guys that have had to eject people like Sloan out of their ranks for being way too far to the right, you know? But once the Liberals, I mean, first of all, you've got the Liberals training Nazi groups in Ukraine, right? You've got Chrystia Freeland and all of her connections in regards to her far right connections, right, to that whole situation, the Stepan Bandera movement. You've got the evocation of the Emergencies Act alone. The evocation of the Emergencies Act alone puts the Liberals probably to the furthest right in terms of a party that has been in power maybe since World War II. Like, I'd have to do a lot more research to completely verify that claim, to like really, really back that idea. But like, if you are genuinely trying to tell me that the Liberals are like a center-left party, the evocation of the Emergency Act absolutely destroys that idea. Like, and especially when it was done for such nothing reasons, right? The Democrats welcomed in the neoconservatives in the US. That's why they've become overly warlike and imperial. I mean, I think the warlike nature of the Americans goes further back than the neoconservatives, right? Like, the neoconservatives is like the Bush crowd, but like those guys, like those guys were around even before the Reaganite, like even before the Reaganites, right? So like, what about Pierre Trudeau and the FLQ crisis? That's the quote unquote separatist movement that came up in Quebec, right, during that period of time. My understanding of that, and again, I'm not an expert on the FLQ crisis, and I need to do a little bit more research before I really comment on this. But I think the key difference there is that there are shots fired, right? Like, that in the FLQ crisis, there is like a violent element that is actually shooting, right? And that there is acts that are being taken out. And to me, I think, like, this Liberal government's response, like, what were these protesters doing? Right? They were blockading a bridge. That's what they were doing. They were blockading a bridge, right? Like, it's the most banal form of protest that you can find. Find a piece of infrastructure and occupy it, right? So, like, if the Occupy movement was happening under these Trudeau Liberals, would they evoke the Emergencies Act over it? Right? The Harper government didn't. So, for hundreds of thousands of years, it was generally understood the Earth was our domain and the moon and the rest of the universe was theirs. Yeah. We're gonna take over the moon, Macht. We're gonna take over the moon. That's what we're gonna do. And I find it interesting that I'm seeing Alberta, but I'm not seeing the other provinces, right? They're really trying to like focus on Alberta and be like, oh, it's those pesky Albertans, right? Oh, it's these. I'm being presented this data as if it's a bad thing that people mistrust the media, when you absolutely should not trust your media at all, like at all. Anything higher than 0, and I'm just like, what? If you're, and again, like, look at this. Like, we talk about why is there no left movement in Canada? Left, 69% of leftists are saying that they trust the media. What the fuck? Like, what the fuck? Actually, what the fuck? Why do you think there's no leftist movement? Because we're like, the media is telling us the truth. Yeah, the media is telling us the truth. We're dumb. That's all. We're dumb. There's no other. We don't need to. Like, yeah, exactly, Methane. This is like I walked up to an engine and there was like a crowbar stuck in the gears. I like open up the thing and the guy goes, "Yeah, I don't know what the problem is." And I'm like, "Well, there's your problem. There's a fucking crowbar right here." And the guy goes, "Oh, Or even worse, he goes, no, that's supposed to be there, I'm pretty sure. Like, what the fuck do you think is going on, guys? Like, what the fuck do you think is going on? Like, we've got a bunch of gullible rubes who claim to be leftists, and it is just a claim, because honestly, if you believe your media, you're probably not a leftist, straight up. Like, what we've got is we've got a lot of head-tilting liberals being like, oh, I do care about those issues I'm going to do nothing about and not fight for sure, calling themselves leftists, while simultaneously saying, but the media is definitely telling us the truth. Like, this is a shocking poll to me. Like, I'm shocked by this. I wasn't shocked about the right, because we've seen it. The PPC is absolutely a case in point. I was sort of thinking that the reason why the left is not becoming more mobilized is because the left is hesitant, has COVID hesitancy, has all this kind of stuff. But now I see pretty clearly it's because the left that exists in Canada is moronic. Now, there's just no other way to call it, right? This shows you pretty straightforwardly that if you're calling yourself a leftist, you're stupid. I don't think I can use other language. Like, this is stupid, what I'm seeing. You believe your media? Why? Why? Right? Like, it's unbelievable. Yeah, if it's mainstream media, I dismiss it out of hand. It's not worth trying to untangle the truth from the propaganda. Exactly. Yeah, exactly, Granny. It's a fucking full-time job to do. And so I basically just disregard it, too. I'm just, like, not interested in it. The only time I really pay attention to the mainstream media is when they concede, right? Because they eventually concede things, right? Like, eventually, when the mainstream media starts reporting the truth, you've got to be like, okay, they finally did it. So, like, for example, in the Ukraine crisis, right? Like, they have been pounding the pulpit for a couple of months now, saying that the Ukrainians are pushing the Russians back and they're winning and all that kind of stuff. But now they're conceding, and when the mainstream media concedes, they like quietly release an article on page 53, right, paragraph 6, and then stop talking about it. That's how they roll, right? Leaving these gullible, idiotic rubes for the next 30 years saying, right? Like, this is stupid, guys. I'm really struggling to get over this, because, like, this is an admission. The question might as well, like, much of the information we receive from news organizations is false. This question might as well have been, are you stupid? 69% of people are like, yeah, I'm stupid. Yep. It's dirty Chicom or rusty propaganda, right? Every now and again, I'll have a look at mainstream news, or I'll catch a headline someone, and it's usually, nope, too much bias for me. And again, like, I think it's fine to read these things and do that kind of stuff if you know that, right? But what's scary is now we're seeing people who are calling themselves leftists and even centrists are morons. Right? And honestly, like, even on the right, you've got 46% still stupidly believing the media for some reason. I don't know why. Like, this overwhelmingly, obviously corrupt apparatus that is clearly lying to you constantly. Like, clearly. Like, we're like, the gaslighting is working. There's just no two ways to describe it. The gaslighting is working. And you can see it pretty clearly in terms of the political parties here, right? PPC voters, unsurprisingly, right? This is why I keep saying over and over again, right? I'm more with the PPC than I am with the Liberals. I'm more with the PPC than I am with the Liberals, because at least the PPC are admitting something's gone wrong, right? Their prescriptions for the problem are dumb, right? They don't actually have a correct analysis of the situation. But at least they're admitting something's gone wrong. At least they're looking at the media establishment and those sorts of places and going, yeah, these guys are liars, right? And you're starting to see, why are more and more people swinging towards the conservatives? Why are more and more people starting to say, like, hey, let's vote conservative? If the election was held today, the conservatives would win, right? 59%, right? And given that the CPC is further to the left than the Liberals are, they're looking far more appealing. You got the Green Party, basically split 50-50. And then NDP and liberals just gullibly absorbing, like, just, yeah, the media is telling the truth. Yup, for sure. No wonder. No wonder. Okay, I gotta move on from this chart or else I'm just gonna lose my fucking brain. I'm gonna keep this one because, wow. In fact, actually, I want to do better than that. Like, I feel like this is an important poll. This goes into the resources. Like, this is one of the more important polls because it really shows you how dumb we are. Like, this is really, really dumb. Among those who think Pierre Poilievre is the conservative leadership candidate who reflects their views, 55% don't trust media information, while among those who identify with Jean Charest, the proportion is much lower at 27%. Look how hard they're pushing Jean Charest, eh? Like, they really, really want Jean Charest to be the leader of the Conservative Party. They really, really are just like, please let our bullshit liberal infect the Conservative Party and become the leader so that people can only choose between liberals, right? Unbelievable. 52% think official government accounts of events can't be trusted. More than half of those interviewed found themselves agreeing with the statement, official government accounts of events can't be trusted. As with news organizations, those with no post-secondary education, right? The insult, right? It's people who are uneducated. Alberta residents, right? The insult. And those on the right showed markedly higher levels of mistrust in government. Majorities of People's Party, Conservative and Green Party's voters indicate mistrust. Those on the left and Liberal voters show higher levels of trust. So again, we're seeing the same trend, right? This is stupid. You've got to be stupid to think this way. Like, you do. At this stage in the game, like, given the amount of betrayal that the Liberals have inflicted on the populace, given the amount of bullshit the Liberals have done, like, fucking the Liberals erected a basic income and then fucking dismantled it. Like what do you need? Like, what do you need? Why do you trust these guys? I don't understand this. I like don't understand this. It's like I'm looking at a battered housewife who's living with like a boyfriend who gaslights her, right? Like, break up, get over it, move on, right? But here we go, and the NDP are not much better, right? It's just gullible. And of course, Alberta, high school education, right? They got to put in the education just to make sure that you're well insulted, right? Like, I have a university education, so get fucked, you stupid fucking insulting poll. And again, why is there no leftist movement in Canada? Because leftists are stupid. That's why. The center, and the right. Identify with Poilievre, identify with Charest. They so want Charest in, right? The upshot, right? So again, this is being framed as bad. It's bad that people don't trust their media. It's bad that people don't trust their government, right? It's bad that we don't trust liars who lie to us and gaslight us, ignore major crises, and are plunging us into a total state of destruction. It's bad, right? So what's the upshot? For years, there has been evidence that trust in institutional sources of information is more skeptically received, but these numbers point to a challenge that is bigger and more influential in the political life of Canada than might have been expected. It's harder for people to agree on what to do to solve collective problems if they don't trust the basic information on offer by official and news sources. That's right, because, don't trust liars, so it makes it hard to solve problems. The challenge facing the Conservative Party is particularly acute. The voters they fear losing to the People's Party have radically lower levels of trust than the voters they need to win closer to the center of the spectrum. So the upshot is that this mistrust is going to make it harder for the Conservatives to get in. That's the upshot. Your bias is showing, guys. Like, I'm not a conservative. Like, I have no plan of voting Conservative, and I think the people who are voting Conservatives are a bit gullible for having done so, because obviously the Conservatives are lying. Like, they're not a working class party. They're never going to be a working class party. But Abacus Dad is basically just saying straight out, like, if we want to keep these liberals in, wow, guys, like, this is. I'm shocked by this. I'm shocked by this. Like, This is dumb. This is dumb. And it's good to know, because now we know when we're talking to NDP and Liberal Party voters that, like, we gotta be more kid gloved with them. They're not our allies. They're not our friends, right? Liberal and NDP voters are deluded and gullible. More deluded and more gullible than conservatives are. Like, let's make it really clear, right? At least conservatives are admitting that something's gone wrong. At least they're admitting that there is a problem. At least they're admitting that something is happening. So when we talk to conservatives, we can actually talk about solutions, right? If they're interested in solutions, right? So the conversation that we're going to have with conservatives is not, bro, the media's lying to you. Bro, like, something's gone fucking wrong. Like, we need to, like, you don't need to convince them there's a house fire, right? And so the right is farther along in this way, which makes sense. We've had a good deal of Liberal Party rule for some time. But what it also means is that when the party swings to the right, all of these crazy gullible rubes are going to start acting like children and babies about it. I'm seeing this with the loss of the NDP, right? But the NDP, what are the NDP crying about right now? We need electoral reform. We need electoral reform. That's the thing we need. Yeah, this was a robbery. Yeah, if we had if the electoral system was more representative of the will of the people, then it would have been. Forget about the fact that, like, the NDP basically abandoned the working class this election. Forget about the fact that, like, literally we're looking at them being like, what are you offering? 2 sick days? Who gives a shit? Like, we know that we're facing major crises. We know that that the system of capital is the system that's abandoning us. We know that that's the case, and we're getting the weakest possible response to it. It couldn't be weaker. Like, how could it possibly be weaker than it is now, right? And while that's happening, fucking NDP and Liberal voters are like, yeah, I believe everything the media is saying. Yeah. When the media talks, I'm like, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we got a huge problem here. This is a massive. I don't think it's surmountable. Like, I really do think that we're gonna have to put the fork in the light socket on this one. Like, we're gonna swing conservative, and we're gonna get a bunch of crybabies crying about absolute bullshit that doesn't matter at all, because their media is constantly, like, spoon feeding them. And only now after the election, right? NDP Insider says the party abandoned working class Ontarians to Doug Ford. Which, yeah. No, but I love this narrative, though, right? So here's the case in point. This is a great case in point in regards to media manipulation, right? Toronto Star is owned by 2 Doug Ford supporters, right? New Democrats have come to the sobering conclusion that they were outflanked by Doug Ford's progressive conservatives. So, and I'm seeing this narrative, this word outflanked is coming into the narrative more and more, because the mainstream media needs to create a narrative that makes sense to the gullible rubes, right? Which are mainly liberals and conservatives, are mainly liberals and NDPers, right? So your gullible rubes need to also espouse this narrative that we were outflanked by Doug Ford because he appealed to the working class better. When that's completely false. Like, if it was an outflank, you would expect higher participation, right? Doug Ford's conservatives also lost voters, right? They lost overall voters because there was a huge decline in voter turnout. And why? Because the working class is obviously abandoning these parties, as we should, which is correct to do, right? And why are we abandoning these parties? Because they're not actually facing the crises. They're not actually talking anything about it. They're not saying capitalism is a problem. They're not saying any of these kinds of stuff. But the mainstream media response is going to be, oh, well, it was an outflanking. That's what happened. That's what happened. Right? Many of the New Democrats have come to the sobering conclusion that they abandoned the working class to get the chattering class, and were outflanked by Premier Doug Ford's progressive conservatives. While the NDP held a slew of urban ridings like Toronto's St. Paul's that many expected the Liberals to win back in last Thursday's election, it lost blue-collar ridings in Hamilton, Windsor, and Timmins to the Conservatives, who made a deliberate push for the Labour vote. We gave up the working class to get the chattering class, and we do great with the chattering class, a senior NDP insider told The Star on Tuesday, speaking confidentially in order to discuss internal deliberations in the wake of party leader Andrea Horwath's resignation. The party's appeal to the chattering class, or the metropolitan middle class of progressive who lost faith in the Liberals, is what propelled the New Democrats to official opposition status with 31 seats, a loss of 9 MPPs from 2018. The working class ridings we either lost or came pretty close to losing, so it's going to be the big challenge. In a notable gain, New Democratic candidate Chandra Pasma felled the only Tory MPP in the election, defeating incumbent Jeremy Roberts in Ottawa West Nepean, with an NDP platform that highlighted a shift in nursing home ownership to non-profit operators, pharmacare, mental and dental care, rent control, and minimum wage hikes. Oh, by appealing to the working class and actually addressing their issues. Oh, look. But it lost 2 Windsor area strongholds, 3 Brampton seats, Timmins and Hamilton, East Stony Creek to Ford's PCs. There are some pieces we have to figure out. Yeah, figure out that the enemy is capitalism. Figure out that the enemy is capitalism. I don't know why you need to be told this. The enemy is capitalism. Say it out loud. Say it ad nauseum, right? People respond to slogans. Ford's existence as the leader of this province proves this, right? People respond to slogans. Say the same thing over and over and over. Keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple, stupid. That's how you win elections. Where she beat Conservative challenger, yeah. But at the end of the day, right, we're seeing a narrative here that insists that Ford wins because of something he did, instead of the NDP and Liberals being abandoned for something they don't do, right? That's the narrative that's being presented here. But the reality is, given what we've seen here, right? This is the narrative now. Right? This is the narrative now. If you're in the NDP and you're the Liberals, this is the narrative because you're gullible and you think the mainstream media tells the truth. Right? That's how it works. Shocking. Honestly, it makes sense because I've noticed for a while the Liberals always had the mainstream view on international politics, but they're able to criticize right-wing sources. During the debate of Has versus Azov something, both Azov something and Destiny were mocking the argument of mainstream media provide false information. Yeah. That's why they're dumb, right? That's why they're alt-right, and that's why they're liberals, right? If you just believe what you're told, uncritically, it's purely a popularity contest. It isn't undemocratic because it's representative and there are multiple layers to it, but it's undemocratic because capital is involved and the politicians don't represent the people. Yeah, I mean, politicians subserviate themselves to capital, right? That's the core of it, that these people get bought, right? And once they're bought, then they don't need to bother, right? Someone like Andrea Horwath, right? Shedding her tears, right? But for her, this is just a personal loss, right? This is just I didn't become the premier. Oh well, right? I guess I'm going to go continue being a landlord, right? Continue working on behalf of the capitalist class, which is all she's done, right? I freaking hate COVID so much. I'm trying to cook some ground beef on the stove. The more I try cooking it, the more it hurts my brain because of the brain fog. Sorry to hear that, bud. Long COVID, man. It's no joke. It's no joke. You know? And today's video was about this subject. I'm really going after the NDP because I think they're weak. Like, I think they're really, really weak. And completely corrupted and completely co-opted, right? Like, when they shouldn't be. If any party in Canada right now should be pounding on the pulpit and should be talking about socialism, it's the NDP. And why aren't they? Because they're bought, right? And we're right to abandon them, and we should continue abandoning them until they actually turn the corner and start actually talking the game that they should be talking. And this pissed me off so much, right? So NDP wants to redistribute excess corporate profits to Canadians to ease inflation, right? So the narrative that's coming out of Jagmeet Singh's NDP is that the excess profits that the corporate, so all the regular profits, so all the regular theft they can keep, but all of the excess profits that they're making, right, should be distributed into the pot. And I'm just like, just say the words basic income. Just say the words. I don't understand why this man is struggling so much with saying two words, right? Say basic income. Basic income now, right? Like, this distributive model is exactly what a basic income would look like. I don't know why you can't say it. And you can't say it because he's bought, right? He's bought by corporate power. And it's getting more and more obvious as time goes on. I'm really like, what's so annoying about that last poll? Like, I'm about to go to a family reunion, and I'm going to be telling these people, like, yeah, I run a YouTube politics channel, right? From a communist perspective. And I'm going to get asked all the dumb questions, and they're going to be dumb because these people believe what they're told. Like, that's the shocking part about it. These people believe what they're told. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? And like, we've created like bubble people who just live in this like little shell where they're not even being like, they're like, not only, like, my narrative used to be that, yeah, people don't really have the time to sift through, so I'm a little forgiving. But now I'm being told that, like, no, I trust it. What? Like, what? I just can't get over it, man. I just can't get over it. Meanwhile, right? CEOs enjoying huge paydays while their workers struggle to pay bills. Like, it's time to name the problem. I don't know why the NDP cannot put this together. I don't know why leftists can't figure this out. That, oh, CEOs buy media to lie to you in order to maintain their position of wealth and prestige. Like, I don't get why that's so difficult to understand. Right? Like, you would do it. If you had $1 billion, you for sure would purchase a media apparatus and use that media apparatus to deceive the people around you. Right? If it meant that you got to keep your billions of dollars. Right? Like, would anybody act differently? Of course they wouldn't. You have $1 billion. And it's staggering to watch this happen in real time, right? It's staggering to watch this happen in real time, where people are just like acknowledging that there are problems, but trust the apparatus that are owned by the people causing the problems. Unreal. Yeah, it's not even the CEOs who reap the most profits. That's another level of protection for real power and wealth. Yeah, exactly, Methane. Isn't that the truth? Like, isn't that the truth? Like, there are layers of power and wealth that the true oligarchs aren't the CEOs, right? The true oligarchs are the investor class, the people like David Thompson, who just like literally owns a piece of everything, right? We just don't talk about him and know, like, for real. I get one of the key questions I ask people here in Canada. We get into these conversations, and I have found that I just ask people, "Hey, who's the richest Canadian?" And when they don't know, I'm literally, I've never found anyone who knew. This is the thing that's staggering. I've never actually asked that question, never once. and had somebody say, oh, it's David Thompson, right? It's always like, well, I don't know. And I've come to look at these people and be like, okay, so you have big opinions on what's going on in your society, but you don't know who the wealthiest Canadian is. Like, you don't know what's going on with the person with the most power in the society, right? Like, why do you think your opinion is valid? Why do you think it's valuable even, or wanted, or merited, if you don't know who the wealthiest Canadian is? Like, for real. And every single time I explain it, I get the same response, right? Like, oh. And then just like a falling into silence and a meandering away, right? Like, David Thompson's a literal baron. His family came over from England as barons with the intention to rule as barons. And as the independence movement gained steam, right, they just quietly moved their business, moved their investments into the business of the nation, right? And David Thompson basically owns 10 to 20% of everything that exists, right? If there's a business, he likely owns 10 to 20% of it, if it's on the public market, which is a great strategy to just be a boil on the side of the society, provide no value whatsoever, and yet be the wealthiest person that exists. And if the enterprise starts to collapse, he just quietly sells his shares, right? Moves it into something else. Like, we don't need these people. They don't provide value. They're not useful. And in my opinion, they provide negative value, right? I don't know if he used to own the Hudson's Bay Company, but again, like the Thompsons' success is not that they own a thing, right? That it's not like Elon Musk, where it's like, I own Tesla, like I have ownership of like this big project, right? Like, their success is that they own a little tiny bit of everything, right? Which is a great strategy. It's a brilliant strategy. But the idea that the Thompson family is not like front page news when they do stuff, when they are the wealthiest Canadian, like, it tells you exactly what's going on in Canada. Like, and of course they get away with it. Why? Because the Liberals and the NDP fucking trust the media. Like, what the fuck? Why? Like, why? Why would you ever trust the media? Like, why would you ever trust, like, the National Post, right? Literally, Conrad Black created it, like a billionaire, in order to lie to you about the nature of what's going on in the country. And it's just continued that way. I don't know why you'd ever believe it. Staggering to see. So here's a story that I wanted to read, because here's how they're going to pitch this stuff, guys, right? Remember, it's all about building a bunch of new units, right? Which we all know the investor class is going to pick up, right? I shouldn't say that. We don't all know that, right? The Liberals and the NDP are looking at this uncritically and being like, oh yeah, that's great news. Toronto developer plans to tackle housing crisis by building 4 towers of mainly affordable units. Sounds great. President of Spotlight Development calls on governments to provide more incentives to developers. So let's unpack that. President of Spotlight Development, right, calls on governments to just give more money to us, right? Don't erect your own institution. Don't do a crown corporation. Don't build it yourself, right? Don't actually make this a government project, right? No, you've got to give more money to developers. You got to give more money to rich cocksuckers who shouldn't exist. A Toronto real estate development firm says it's trying to help address the housing crisis by proposing to build 4 towers of mainly affordable housing in the city's northwest. So here's the grift, right? We're going to watch this unfold. Spotlight Development Inc. wants the towers, ranging in height from 15 to 35 stories, to be a mixture of condo ownership and rental units, with 70% of housing units to be affordable. We've seen this before, right? It starts at 70, and then as the thing gets built, it goes down to 50, and then as it begins to finish up, it turns into 30, and then as they finally like put the last slap of paint on it, it's 10%. That's how it goes, right? It's just like Joe Biden's infrastructure bill. right? We're going to spend 7 trillion, sorry, 5 trillion, sorry, 2 trillion, sorry, 1.5 billion. That's how this kind of thing goes, right? And if you're a liberal or an NDPer, you're going to look at that and be like, wow, 4 affordable units at 70%, I believe it because my media told me that's what's happening. Just uncritically, like, what is this except just propaganda for Spotlight development at this point? Do they even have a counter narrative in the article? Let's find out. The project's, yeah, for Sherry Larjani, president of Spotlight Development, the project is about giving back, guys. That's what it is. The company is going beyond what is required, she said. This fucking grift. We have not been mandated to do an affordable housing component on this project. Rather, we decided we're going to dedicate this whole project to the idea of affordable housing and create much needed affordable housing in the city of Toronto. You see the salesmanship here? You see how they're grifting you, right? This is how they get the check mark on the project, and then as the project's built, 70, 50, 20, 10, maybe even 0, right? As the investor class swoops in and buys up these properties. The housing crisis is because of lack of supply, certainly not the investor class siphoning away a bunch of properties. And if we can if we can help developers by facilitating in many ways to be able to create more housing, we're tackling the concept of affordable housing in some way. Said Spotlight is partnered with 4 nonprofit agencies, Habitat for Humanity, Wood Green Community Services, Black North Initiative, and Trillium Housing to help the company develop affordable ownership models. Right, that this gives credibility, but like these types of organizations shouldn't exist, right? And they exist only to exist at this point. Like, we could resolve this crisis ourselves. We don't need these nonprofits to be able to do it. Inclusivity is part of the project, and the developer will use funds from the sale of market units to service the deepest levels of affordability. Yeah, wank, 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 wank. Is there any skepticism at all in this article? Like, it's just a big wank. I mean, just wank, wank, wank. The province should use blah, blah, blah. That's not going to happen. Shorten approval process. Exactly. We should shorten the approval process. We got to really make this happen, right? As fast as possible. So this is a propaganda piece for Spotlight Development from the CBC, right? No skepticism, no reporting on the reality. Like, we've seen this over and over again. Acorn's a great organization that highlights this all the time because this is one of their core central issues, right? Affordable housing is a major platform issue for Acorn. And they've pointed out repeatedly the process of how this works, right? They start with this grift, with this narrative, and they insist that we've got to get it built as swiftly as possible, right? To get those affordable units out there. And then 70 becomes 50, becomes 20, becomes 10, becomes 0. That's the grift. That's the way it works. And in the meantime, that grift is on beneath a larger grift, which is just ignore the investor class buying up these properties. Just ignore the fact that the billionaire class is storing their wealth in these units in the first place. Like, and of course, as we just saw, most liberals and most NDPers are just like, yeah, we're building affordable units. That's gonna do it. Yeah. I always like the Zeitgeist Project's view of housing, resource-based economy, small, highly dense cities that don't require personal transport. Yeah, there's a few places that have done these sorts of things where you have when you look at it from an aerial view, it looks like a cube, right? There's like a Borg cube almost. But when you're in the city, right? It's like a contained community where they have their own market and they have their own accessibility to all of these things. Like it's not a big towering skyscraper and the market is like 10 blocks down, right? Like everything is contained in it, which I think is the wisest way to go about it if you're going to do urban building, right? Yeah, affordable unit is only 1.2K a month. Yeah, average across Canada. I've seen data going up to 3K a month. Yep. No, the rent in the housing is getting ridiculous. Like soon affordable, like when they say affordable housing, what that'll mean is $3,000, right? Like affordable housing, like, and that's another part of this whole grift, right? Is the word affordable. Well, what do they mean by that? Do they mean affordable for like a student? Do they mean affordable for like a part-time worker? Do they mean or do they mean affordable for guys working two jobs, right? Like two full-time jobs. Is that what they're talking about? So it's just grifts upon grifts upon grifts. And the fact that the CBC is uncritically publishing obvious overt propaganda from Spotlight Development with no one. There's not a single voice in this article being like, hello? Like, with any amount of skepticism whatsoever. Tells you exactly, like, why we don't trust the media, right? Like, I almost guarantee that as this project moves forward, because that's what's going to happen, we're going to see article after article come out that's just a steady decline, right? Because that's the way it works. Zeitgeist is the natural progression of the brilliant concept of commie blocks. Gotta love it. The World Bank says most countries are headed for a recession. Warns of a possible return to 1970s stagflation. Well, you don't think we're already in 1970s stagflation? Like, I think that these guys are really downplaying this shit. Like, the downplay is what's impressive, right? Like, it's not going to be a recession. Like, we're headed for a full-blown depression. We're headed for a situation where, like, we're already in a situation where huge sections of the Canadian public are struggling with food. Just basically food, right? We're already in that position where people are having to make big decisions about where to spend their money and are eating less food on purpose because they have no other option. There's no alternative for them, right? And this puts us in a recession already. Like, we're being so bullshitted about all of this kind of shit. It's unbelievable to watch. And to hear that literally like 60% of liberals are like, yeah, the media is telling us the truth. Unreal. I'm actually wondering if real wage is about to start to decrease. I mean, what with inflation, right? Like, what with the way inflation is working. I just bought another 50 pounds of rice. I hope things don't get as bad as I think they will. Yeah, we'll see, man. We'll see. Right? We're definitely going to get hit with some famines. Like, that's unavoidable at this point. We're definitely going to get hit with shortages. Like, that's unavoidable at this point. It's just like, how bad is it going to actually get is the big question. And if you ask me, because of the incompetence and, frankly, malice greed of our ruling class, we have no plan whatsoever to transition reasonably to any kind of model that isn't based on fossil fuels. Yeah, the nukes have been launched, but I gotta go to work. Exactly, Matthias. And that's what's so funny about what's happening, man. Like, why are people still going to work? Well, they're still going to work because they believe the media. Like, that's what it is. I just, which is shocking to me. Like, that's like gullible rubery on the highest possible level. Like, I just am shocked to see how, I know I keep looping back around to it, guys, but I just can't get over it. Like, I can't get over it. I was expecting, like, at most to see maybe 40% of people across the spectrum trust the media, at most, on, like, the highest possible level. To see a number as high as 69%, staggering. Like, yeah, no, I get it now. I get it. Like, why are people still supporting the Liberals? Why are people still supporting the NDP? Because they're gullible, right? Like, because they're fucking gullible. And why are people supporting the Conservatives? Well, because they feel like they have nowhere else to go. And at least the conservatives are admitting there's a problem. Right? Like, it's how right-wing demagogues seize power, is they actually galvanize the anger of the populace. But you can't galvanize an anger if you're living in a deluded little bubble where you've accepted that you're selling your life to capital, right? Oh yeah, I don't need to investigate my own internal self. I don't need to focus on friends, family, community. I don't need to acknowledge that there's a deeper reality that we all exist in together. I don't need to acknowledge any of that kind of stuff. I just need to get to sleep on time and go to work and do a good job. Like, it's a lost life. It's a lost generation. Like, we're just yeah, and America being built around the car, pretty dumb idea. Yeah. No, and it is a dumb idea. Like, and we're paying the cost in significant ways. Like, other countries, talking about China, right? They built a high-speed rail system, right? They understand that public transit's the way to go. And America could do the same thing, right? America could absolutely do the same thing. And but it's incapable of doing so because it's spent all its resources on this idiotic infrastructure system and to support individual cars, which are now as big as battle tanks, right when we're in the midst of a climate crisis and a decline of oil. You're right, Mark. I was just thinking about it. I'll choose something a little closer to the truth, given the choice, but it's all bad. You're right about that, man. You're right about that. Here we go. I'm with you, Mark. 7. Nova Scotia, good to see you.
Here we go for today's number. It's June 8th,
Methane, League of
2022.
Gritting with a 9. Got 2
10
9s.
balls. Each ball has a number. Numbers 1 through 10.
Here we go. It's our day, Mark. I feel it.
The numbers.
When I saw there was 15 people watching, I should have 15 numbers in the chat right now.
Pick a number.
All right. People just want to listen in. I get it. I feel you. Here we go. Done with a 3.
Number is 5.
Oh, get fucked, everyone. Get fucked, chat. Everyone got fucked today. No good for anyone. Hey, Loaf, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. Bah, 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 bah. Wah, wah, wah. What can we do? What can we do, right? Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, right? You take the good, you take the bad, you get them both, and what you have, the facts of life. The facts of life. The facts of life. Losers all. Exactly. Losers all. The Schiller Institute professor made a very interesting comment in regards to the Western treatment of Russia now versus the Cold War. Yeah, the Western world actually respected the USSR leaders, but nowadays they don't respect Russia now. Yeah, because it's still, like, it's mainly ruled by an oligarchy, right? That, like, Putin has a degree of power, certainly, but the power exists within the oligarchy, and it doesn't look like Putin is interested in overthrowing the oligarchy, because he knows that that would result in a pretty significant conflict internally, which he doesn't want. And like, the Western world only respects capital. It's all they respect. They only respect money. They don't respect anything else, right? And so when the USSR existed, well, who had the money? Who had the capital, right? Who had control of it? So you had to respect them. But now, like, and that's part of a big reason why, like, I think everybody's losing their mind about Putin invading Ukraine. Is this like, gasp, a world leader actually did something to confront the United States and NATO in a significant way. Gasp. He didn't just sit back and watch us do it. He didn't just sit back and allow us to destroy Ukraine and turn it into another, like, Israel-Palestinian state, right? And into another apartheid state. Gasp. He actually did something. Gasp. Right? How dare he fight back? How dare he? Right? And whereas, like, I don't think the West would have acted this way to Stalin, right? Like, if Stalin was in power, they wouldn't dick around on a border like that, because Stalin would be like, well, fuck you, And they know it, right? And they know it. So, and the whole Ukraine situation is so it really is. I think it was Chris Hedges that said several years ago. I heard him say, like, when empires die, they do so with a series of embarrassing military defeats, where they make stupid decisions at the end of their lives. And this Ukraine situation, I like, the thing that blows me away the most about it is that the United States has lost so much for having done this. They've lost so much for having done this. And what did they gain? What did they gain? Like, what even if they achieved their objectives, what would they have gained? Right? Like, the United States and NATO are huge losers in this. Enormous losers in this. Like, all they're doing is pushing the vast majority of the world populations towards the rising superpower in the world, which is China. And more, the United States is losing the ability to confront China militarily, right? It's not going to be able to actually mount a war against China without it escalating into full-scale planetary destruction. Which, given how the Americans have acted in this situation towards Russia, they at least have the sense to not get nuked, right? They at least have that bare bones. They're not completely crazed. But the United States is facing a currency crisis now. They've alienated all of their, even some of their previous allies, like Saudi Arabia is a great example of this. Right? Yes, thank you, methane, so far. Thank you for maintaining that looming specter. Good opportunity to say, guys, like, share, subscribe, tell people I exist. Please tell people I exist. Please, goddamn, find these liberals and NDPers. Find these clueless idiots who are actually walking around thinking the mainstream media is telling them the truth. Like, we got to talk to these guys. Like, we really do. Like, I'm shocked. I'm shocked by this, and we've got to funnel more people towards people like me, so that I can look at them and be like, guys, like, come on, like, you gotta not be serious. Mystic Werewolf, depression sucks. Yes, it does, sir. Depression. That's part of growing up, bud. Facing that depression. Always remember, depression is actually doing you a favor. That's what it is. You hate it, it's not any fun, but it's actually helping you. Because it forces you into a position where you analyze yourself and you begin asking yourself the basic question, why am I depressed? What is the nugget of this? Jim Carrey, of all people, had a really interesting perspective on depression, which is depression is your body telling you that it no longer wants to maintain the avatar any longer. That we put up a mask, right? We create a version of ourselves, right? And everybody does this naturally. And in a capitalist society, that version of yourself is a salesman, always. And most of us don't have the energy or the internal power to maintain such an illusion. And so depression comes along and says, stop that. Stop that. That's not what you are. That's not who you are. You're a real person, goddammit. You're not this false avatar that's put up in front of you. Don't self-diagnose bipolar, okay, bud? Like, get a doctor. Get a doctor to tell you that, okay? I have seen people self-diagnose things like bipolar disorder, right? I've seen people try to diagnose other people. Like, it's not a good scene. It's not a good scene. If you actually think this is the case, for real and quite seriously, speak with a doctor. Speak with an actual medical professional. It's okay to be suspicious, but don't plant your feet on it, because it could be more likely, and I think it's considerably more likely, that you're just living in a shitty society that's trying to destroy you, and you feel bad about it. And you've got people who are completely incentivized to say to you, oh, you can't sit in front of a screen for 8 hours a day working for a corporation that's sucking away your soul and destroying you. You have a mental illness. Like, no, you don't. Like, you're likely living in a society that is trying to destroy you. You're listening to the communist take on mental health care. That, of course, capitalism would call rebellion against capitalism a mental health issue. Of course it would. Why wouldn't it? Right? Oh, you can't do the bidding of the capitalist class, and it makes you feel so disgusted and repugnant and disgraced and shameful and horrible, which are all emotions that you lack the capacity to understand or grapple with, because we as capitalists do everything we can to reduce your connection to your emotional self outside of the veneration of like neo-fascist figures like Tony Stark. So if you feel bad, it must mean that you have a mental health issue. There's something wrong with you, right? You didn't individualize your individualism enough to be an individual, and so there's something wrong with you. So take these pills that we sell you, because that's the solution to capital that capitalists always have, is to create a problem and then sell you a solution, right? And shut up about it. Don't actually ask, like, hey, why is my environment polluted? Hey, why are there all these shitty vehicles everywhere? Hey, why is climate change destroying the place? Hey, why do I have to like sit in a dingy basement in front of a computer screen, cold calling people to ask them their opinions on dumb bullshit? Hey, why do I have to sit in an office fielding calls so that half drunk housewives can go get a pedicure? Like, why do I have to do all of these pedantic, moronic, pathetic tasks in order to placate a childish overclass? No, you can't say any of that. If you do, you've got a mental illness, right? That's the way the capitalist class operates. If you lack the capacity to articulate everything that I articulated, your body will articulate it for you. And it's not going to articulate it using language. It's going to articulate it by depressing you, by making you lash out. Like, when Britney Spears freaked out and shaved her head, do you think she had a mental illness, or do you think that her father was enslaving her and she was tired of it? Like, if you're a capitalist, no, just give her some pills, right? Quiet her up. Right? And we know that the capitalist system, go take a look at Frances Farmer, right? Frances Farmer was exactly the same situation that Spears was in, right? They ended up fucking lobotomizing her, right? So anybody who wants to tell me that the capitalist death cult is not attempting to diagnose people who are rebelling against the death cult as having a mental illness are probably those fucking liberals and NDPers who think the mainstream media are not lying to them. Right? Just gullible rubes being spoon-fed bullshit, and they're just like, yeah, this is great. I'm just going to keep working for this. This is great. I'm just going to keep working for this. Gonna go see your goddamn dumbass Marvel movies. Shrooms help me with depression. Yeah, 1 gram trip will keep me stable for 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, isn't that interesting? The earth grew something, you ate it, and you felt better. Isn't that interesting? Interesting how that works, eh? Like, the earth knows what's up. It knows what it's doing, right? It knows what it's doing. It's just a question of how long is it gonna put up with our shit. I think I'm unable to function in this society because I can't fake a mask anymore. Not sure how to act if I ever did. You know, methane, that's a really interesting one, right? I think about that all the time because my job is to interact with the public. I work in a profession where there's a lot of back of house stuff going on. Like, I work in a kitchen, basically, but I'm the front of house person. And people really value me there because I deal with the customers. None of these people want to deal with the customers, and it's for this reason, right? Because it's hard to maintain a mask, especially these days. But my thing is that I don't maintain a mask, right? You get me. You get what I get. You. This is who I am. Of course, I don't go full throttle communist on them. But the secret, in my view, the secret to living in a capitalist society and dealing with the public where you need to maintain a mask is to actually love the person you're talking to. That's the real solution. That when the person comes up, you're speaking to a friend. You're speaking to somebody who you're rooting for. That's the true secret. That they're not inflicting themselves on you. That you two are just passers-by on each other's lives. And this is the intersect moment. And yes, there's all the capital, there's all this kind of stuff, right? But invest in their life. Invest in who they are. Love them. Love them. While also understanding that when they shit on you, because that happens, that you're just a visitor. You're just a visitor in their life, and that their grand punishment is living with themselves. I used to like Joe Rogan and Bill Maher. Now they've gone full hard sociopathic out of touch elitists. Yeah, what a disgrace they are. I mean, even Joe Rogan's own subreddit has turned against him, right? Like, it's like a weird little community now where people are there, and they're there because they found like a little community that they can interact with, and people talk to them, and they have like talking points and all this kind of stuff. But now it's steadily turning into like, yeah, Joe's old now. Like he's no longer part of, like, he's not on the side of the working class anymore, and everybody knows it, right? And of course he isn't. He got $100 million Spotify deal, for fuck's sake, and then moved out to Texas, where he lives in like a palace, and is just kind of like a bubble man, right? He only really talks to people he cares to talk to, and he doesn't ever have his worldview confronted, right? The number one thing that I will critique Joe Rogan on, and more, it's becoming more and more obvious, like as time goes forward, especially as the right gets more and more violent towards trans people, is that Joe Rogan doesn't have a trans right activist on, right? Like, he's always saying, well, it's okay to platform literal Nazis. Like, it's totally fine to get literal Nazis and neo-fascists in here, because the best way to defeat bad speech, which is these guys presumably, is with good speech, right? So you get a neo-Nazi in, and then you get a communist, although he never talks to communists. But not that there's many of those in America in the first place. But when it comes to the trans issue, he'll platform like literal idiots who are saying the dumbest shit you've ever heard in your life, and he'll sit there and be like, yeah. But he won't actually talk to a trans rights activist, which makes him a hypocrite and somebody that you can't really pay attention to anymore, as far as I'm concerned, right? Like, and I think the only reason he doesn't do it is straight up cowardice. That's all. I think it's just straight up cowardice. He doesn't actually want to talk to a trans person. He doesn't actually want to know anything about the subject. He wants to exist in his bias-filled bubble, right? He wants to shit on trans people, right? Because it's overt transphobia. There's no other way to call it, right? He's not bringing up the sports issue because it's an interesting issue for sports and all that. He's bringing it up because it's a safe way to go after trans people for being trans. That's all, right? And if that's not true, then he should have a trans right activist on his show and he should talk to them. But he doesn't. So get fucked. I'm not diplomatic or tolerant of BS anymore. Yeah, working on it. But it's not even about diplomacy or tolerance of BS or any of that kind of stuff. Like, it's just accepting that people are crazy and nuts and dismissive and shitty, and just understanding that that's what it is, and loving them anyway, just forgiving them anyway. That, like, you're intersecting with that person in the moment. And they don't even, like, you don't know what's going on in their life. Like, you don't know what's going on in their life. That you really could be talking to somebody who just found out that their father died. right? That really could be the case, and you just don't know that. And so it's just about like not onboarding it. Like, don't carry their burden around. You don't have to, and loving them anyway. Also, racism is actually getting worse. Yep, absolutely. More and more broken young men joining hate groups. Pretty concerning future. Does not look good. Yeah, I think that's accurate, Mystic, right? Because you take a look at when people break, they break hard, right? Like, if you are like a middle class kid. This applies to the mass shootings in the United States as well. Like, if you're like a middle class kid and you think that your prospects are basically just this total destruction, you're gonna break. And what are the groups that exist? Right? The groups that exist are far right groups because at least they've acknowledged that something's gone wrong, while the quote unquote leftists that exist are delusionally walking around being like, yeah, everything's fine. The media's totally telling us the truth. Right? So people are breaking. And they're breaking in significant ways, and they're going nuts, right? And American society is going to get crazy. Like, things are going to get pretty wacky up here in Canada, but what's going to happen in the States is nuts. Like, it's going to be, and it's going to be like a wildfire. And there are going to be people. There are absolutely going to be people who are like walking around going, everything is fine, and then the wildfire will sweep through, and they'll be like, what is happening? And they're not going to understand it, right? It's my favorite thing to tell customers no whenever I can. I'm working in customer service, so satisfying, and just say no. Don't offer explanations if you can, and don't say sorry, just no. That's not, in my experience, that's not the best way to go about it, generation. I'm just going to say. Maybe it's like personally satisfying for you in your position, but like, I'm generally sympathetic to the person that's in front of me, because they're usually just a lost little lamb. Just kind of like, I just would like a cookie, please. That's basically it, most of the time. Imagine if Joe had to talk to Natalie. I don't know who Natalie is, Content. Can you give me a full name? Maybe I'll Google it. Also, John, Gen Z is having the least sex in history. Yeah. No wonder society today is angry, stressed out, and broken. I was talking about that just last night. This is a great segue for us, Mystic. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. I need to get like a graphic in for this. But like, yeah, like Gen Z least amount of sex. What's driving Gen Z's aversion to sex? What do you talk? Oh my God. Here we go. Let's read this garbage. What's driving Gen Z's aversion to sex? Talk about your fucking gaslighting, man. Holy shit. Gen Z is shaping up to be the least sex-positive generation in a long time. Listen to this gaslighting bullshit. Holy fuck. Gen Z refers to the cohort born after 1996, so its oldest members are 24 now, and yet they aren't behaving like other generations at that age. Real head-scratcher. One seminal study found that Gen Zers between the age of 20 and 24 were more likely than both millennials and Gen Xers to report having had no sexual partners. 15% said they were sexually inactive, compared with only 6% of Gen Xers. Other studies found similar patterns of sexlessness and was particularly pronounced among young men who like to play video games. Right? Young men who have checked out of society because society has completely betrayed them. Awash in semi-pornographic advertising, a large portion of Gen Z would rather just not. What could be driving this aversion to sex? It's important to remember that 85% of Gen Z do report sexual activity since turning 18, but for the high percentage who do not, several key factors appear to be at play. Young men have fallen behind their female peers in educational attainment and employment prospects. That's a nice way of saying have been abandoned, right? Which can create an overall sense of malaise and disillusionment. And when young men are struggling, young women will feel those effects too. In general, Gen Zers tend to reach life milestones later than earlier generations. Yeah, it's the systemic grind, right? Millennial, like Gen X got less wealth than boomers. Millennials got less wealth than Gen X. Gen Z are basically getting nothing. right? There's a reason why people are checking out, and they should check out. They're less likely to get a paying job or a driver's license than previous generations of adolescents, or spend time without parental supervision. Without a car, paycheck, or personal privacy, dating and sex can become extremely difficult. Oh, so the economy has collapsed. Gen Z can't actually get a house. They can't, like, literally, like, an 18-year-old boomer could, like, literally walk across the street with a grade 9 education and say, hey, can I work in your canning facility? And they'd be like, sure, stand on the line, hit this button if something goes wrong, and he'd have a fucking house for it. Like, what the fuck do you think is happening, you dimwits? Oy. But as a sex neuroscientist, I've come to believe that it's not just external factors. Here we go. Here comes the gaslighting, leading to the repudiation of sex positivity among so many Gen Zers. Consider that most social interactions for this generation, including hanging out with friends, happens through digital screens. It must be that pesky internet. In some cases, racking up 9 hours a day. There's no doubt in my mind that this technological disconnect is having a profound effect on sexuality. One can why are people retreating to screens? Why are people retreating to this form of escapism? Could it possibly be because their whole society is in a free fall collapse? Holy shit. One can easily imagine how many adolescents and young adults, sex, intimacy, and human connection can become foreign concepts, perhaps even a little intimidating. Then there's the difficulty in meeting people in real life. And why is the case? Could it be the collapsing economic situation? One avenue that used to be available has been blocked, has been meeting people at work. Yes, I have been complaining about this a lot. The corporate society has literally banned it. If you even engage in the conversation of sex at work, you will be dismissed. You will be dismissed on the spot. That's the corporate environment right now. If you bring up sex, if someone accuses you of sexual, literally, if you mention sex, HR will come. You will get a permanent write-up on your record, and that's at bare minimum, right? At bare minimum. Like, I have seen people get dismissed from their workplace on the spot. So it's just completely taboo. It's a no-go if you're working in today's society. The Me Too movement undoubtedly brought positive social change, but it took workplace dating off the table, introduced an entirely new can of worms, complicating the male-female dynamic. Young people now have fewer places to meet a potential partner, and young men fear serious reputational damage in addition to baseline romantic rejection if the other party doesn't appreciate being asked out. It's not all bad news that a lot of Gen Z isn't sexually active. One of the silver linings is that U.S. teen pregnancy rates have continued to decline, possibly thanks to a documented decline in alcohol consumption when it comes to Gen Z. Finally, it's possible that these Gen Zers who are abjuring sex are actually having it online. Sexual outlets like sexting and webcamming could account for why young people are having less sex, given that online sex isn't typically taken into account. But it's online where Gen Z's real social activity lies. Like, no, it's killing me how there's like no commentary of like, why is the digital space expanding? It's because people are trying to use it as an escape outlet, right? People are escaping to digital spaces because the real world has become hostile. One of the things I think about a lot is that if it wasn't for the internet, if suddenly the power went out or something, right? My power went out fairly recently. Like, if the internet didn't exist as an outlet for these kinds of conversations to happen, I think that we already would be facing a revolution, right? People would be living in the world that they actually inhabit, and they would understand how shitty it is. Because it is. It's shitty. The real world is garbage. It's total shit. Sorry, let me be really specific. The world itself is beautiful. Get into your parks, right? Get into nature, right? Forget about the man-made constructs, right? The abstraction of money, the abstraction of wealth, and all these things. Live in the natural world, right? That's wonderful. That's what we should be doing all our time with. That's what we should be spending all our time on. The construct that we have inflicted on the world as humanity is disgraceful. Just absolutely disgraceful. And the reason why people are escaping into this digital realm is for that reason. Because at least in the digital realm, there's a certain degree of freedom. You can have fun and pursue objectives and not be judged for it, right? You can live in a digital hallucinatory world where the meritocracy actually exists. You get in what you put out, or you get out what you put in, right? The myth of the meritocracy actually exists in digital spaces, right? So, of course, people are retreating to the online digital spaces, and of course, it's having a profound impact on our sexuality, because we've created a terrifying nightmare filled of neoliberals and Nazis. Who wants to live in this world? Like, who's actually enjoying this, right? Besides the psychopath class. Literally only good-looking people are getting laid nowadays. In the 60s and 70s, almost everyone got laid, regardless of looks and sizes. Yeah. Well, and the core of it is economics, right? Like, if you are a woman working a full-time job, right, and you're looking for a mate, well, you only have a very small amount of time to actually put in to do that. And chances are good they will also be working a full-time job, because everybody needs to work a full-time job in this society or else die, right? That's the way it works. That's the horrifying core of the nightmare society we live in, is that everyone needs to work full-time jobs or else they die. Whereas a couple of generations ago, right, a single wage earner working a full-time job could have a wife, 3 kids, a car, just like watch Married with Children, for Christ's sakes. Like, and so if you've got this narrow, tiny, itsy-bitsy window to pursue, well, you're only going to tolerate and you're only going to try to accept the best of the best, right? And anything less than that, you just don't have time for. You're just not willing to put the time in because you have such a narrow window. Because we're overworked, we're exhausted, we're exasperated, and we still believe the media for some reason. I honestly hate incels, but I understand why they turn to that side. Small bit of myself sympathizes with them. I used to be that way with the incels, but once you read what they write, you realize that these people are just despicable. Like, literally enslaving women. Like, that's their position, is that women should be slaves. And it's like, yeah, maybe not, bud. Maybe not. Like, I get where they're coming from in terms of sexual repression. I get where they're coming from in terms of their inability to actually find women to enslave. But I don't really have much sympathy for these guys anymore. I knew a guy and his dad legit walked out of high school on his last day of school for an interview at CN Rail, got a job that day. Yeah, that was his only job. Yeah. No, I absolutely. This is why the advice that couldn't understand why his sons had trouble getting jobs ever. Had no sympathy, but couldn't see how incredibly lucky he was. Yeah, this is why the advice that boomers give are so childish, right? This is why they live in this childish little bubble. Because they literally went from a high school, they literally walked out of high school. I knew a guy, right? I knew a guy who didn't graduate from high school, didn't have a high school education. He had a grade 9 education, walked in to a mechanic shop and said, hey, I'm a hard worker. I'll learn whatever you want to tell me. I'll do whatever you need to tell me. I just need a job. And they got hired. And they were just put on the grinder. Right? They just grinded crankshafts. That's it. Owns a house. Has a wife. What the fuck are you talking about? So this like boomer mentality, this idea that just go in and shake his hand and tell him you're a hard worker, right? Get the fuck out of here. Like, get the fuck out of here with that. It's baby talk. Like, it's baby talk. And the reality is that nobody is actually confronting these boomers in serious ways. Like, the political class isn't. Because the political class wants their votes. And what's the best way to get a vote from somebody? Just maintain their delusion. Right? Just maintain it. No one wants to work these days. Well, what's your wage? Well, I'm paying less than the minimum wage. What do you think's going on? I think dating apps and social media contributed to this sexless crisis. I mean, again, right? The dating apps and social media are like are the salesman's approach, right? You sell a solution to the problem you're creating, right? That's capitalism to a T, right? Dating apps and social media are a way to sell a solution to the problem you're creating. Oh, the society is upset because nobody can actually get together and actually talk to one another and actually have friends or family or any of these sorts of things because we've fractured everybody and everything's so destroyed. So here's a digital version of it. Here's like a fake facade of this, which has nothing to do with reality. I really, really wish we could have one of those giant solar flares that come around once every 100 years or so, wipe out all electricity for a few years. I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea, you know? Like, I don't know if it's a bad idea that, like, what if we did shut it all down for a bit? Right? I kind of think it would be good for us. Right? Is all of this good? Like, is all of this social media, is all this digital, like, is what we're doing now even good? Like, I like to think so. I like to think that we are attempting to create a solidarity place, and I encourage everybody to carry this energy into the real world. Organize locally, talk to your neighbors, right? All of that kind of stuff. But, like, is it actually helping? Noam Chomsky actually said, interestingly, that he thought that the internet was actually having a negative effect. He was of the opinion that if it wasn't for the internet, people would be organizing more readily locally, right? That local movements would exist more with more strength. And so I do think that we have to acknowledge that what we're doing here is just the beginning. But the real strength is to organize locally, to find your local groups, and to organize power where you are and not in a digital space. That it's great that we're all here to encourage one another, but that's what we need to be encouraging one another to do. To not simply land here and stay here, but to carry that energy outside into the real world. Because it's up to us to acknowledge that the real world has become terrifying and shitty, and we are the ones that need to push back against that. And the way that I am going to push back against that is with my music. Because that's the tool, that's the weapon I've got, right? Is to go into the world and make it better the only way I know how to, which is by soothing people's soul through the power of music. Which, hey, how about we do some of that? Now, I've just recently done a drop down a chord, so this guitar is going to be out of tune real badly. Not bad. And I really realized this when I went to that open mic night. People are hurting. And they don't want to see you also hurting. Because they see that all the time. Like, I played 2020, right? You guys know 2020, which I think is a great song. You guys know 2020. It wasn't well received. And I was surprised initially, but then I saw there was an older crowd. And I think that 2020 is a young man's song. I think if you're under the age of 20, 2020 makes a lot of sense. But when you play other songs, right? Like this is the song that was most well received. These times they are... Nope, we're going higher than that. We're going higher than that. These times they are uncertain, of that there is no doubt. and nobody can tell me quite what it's all about. The heartbreak and the loneliness, the chaos and the fear will make even the strongest cry. I wish my ma was here. A young man on a battlefield fights for a rich man's gold. The bullet cracks into his spine. He knows he won't grow old. And as the tears come streaming down, and once his mind goes clear, the war was fought for nothing, he cries, I wish my ma was here. A lively story well in hand, a joke to soothe your soul. And when it came to arguing, she'd forgive and let it go. And when I cried, she held me, told me it's okay, my dear. And as we face these darkened days, I wish my ma was here. And as we march into the streets, as all the righteous do, we'll raise our voices to the skies. They cannot stop the truth. And as we tear their structures down, we'll raise a victory cheer. We made the world a better place, and I wish my ma was here. Yeah, we made the world a better place, and I wish my ma was here. And there's something healing about that song. You know, you're not sending anger into the world. You're not sending frustration. You're sending a type of sadness, but it's got a hopeful kind of sadness where it agrees, like with the natural progression of life, right? How we lose one another, and so it's got that grief quality, but it's got that a hopefulness to it as well, which is why I think it was well received, and that's what I want to send into the world, and that's what I want to be doing, right? So if you're in the city of Toronto, Fridays, 8 o'clock, 5:35, Fox and the Fiddle, I'll be there. That's what I'll be doing. I heard a story at my fish plant job that a worker had sex with a Chinese worker, and both of them got fired. My workplace hired foreign Chinese women to work at the fish plant. Yeah, my lib friends love the CBC and Toronto Star and think they're doing accurate reporting. I think it's fine to read the CBC and Toronto Star, but you got to know who they are, right? Like, Toronto Star is owned by Doug Ford supporters, and the CBC is obviously state propaganda, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. No one is enjoying this world except the sociopaths or psychopaths. Yes, but as you said, John, even they're getting tired of this reality, and that's why they're driving all this NFT cryptocurrency VR. Yeah, right? You can't improve the world, right? You got to fade into this fake bullshit. Don't forget that most job wants education, 1 to 5 years. Yeah, exactly, for a startup. Surprised they haven't legalized prostitution. I mean, prostitution is legalized in Ontario. It is legal. There are certain constrictions. Like, the compromise here in Canada was you can't have street prostitution, right? So you can't be a prostitute on the street selling your stuff, which I got to tell you, has made Toronto a worse city. Oh, beautiful women on the streets. Like, oh no. Like, you know, that's my feeling. Anyway. I've come to think that a lot of the jobs that are advertised are actually just being advertised for the sake of it. Yet the company organization already knows who they'll hire because they'll have to hire internally. Yeah, that's been my experience as well. Very, very, very rarely do companies just hire someone who walks in off the street. Yeah, I love seeing billionaires cry about huge... Yeah, we made a shitty society, right? Yeah, that's exactly right. It's got a sweetness to it, right? And also, Antarctica. I think Antarctica goes really well. Because what I like about Antarctica is that it acknowledges what's happening, but it's a hopeful message that we can do it, right? That we can do it, which I think people like, right? Oh yeah, gonna have to definitely put that one up. Oh man, I've forgotten how to play my guitar. Holy shit. Got asked a question by my niece who's 5 years old. What's the world gonna be like when I'm old? I looked up at the crimson smoke-filled sky. I thought, what's the harm in telling one more lie? I said, everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? The burning sun won't leave a paper trail. Why work so hard if it's too big to fail? And what's the point of feeding this machine if it won't make the world in our dreams, where everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets? You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I know one day my maker I will meet, when death's sweet kiss comes and sweeps me off my feet. I hope by then we've learned a little more. I'd like this place to be better than before, so everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? When everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in Antarctica is covered in ice. I still believe that we can do it, you know? Even now. I'll always believe it, you know? That even as the fires spread, even as the oceans rise, even as we're faced with catastrophe after catastrophe after catastrophe, I still believe that we can do it. Because the earth created this place for us. And we've forgotten that. We've forgotten that. The earth created us. This idea that we have dominion and that we are dominating the earth is a childish notion. The notion of a childish people. The earth created us and is more than capable of destroying us. And, thank you very much, the earth is more than capable of healing itself. That it was a garden before we even got here. It's more than capable of creating that garden once again. And if we want to be here to see the miracle of the earth healing itself, then all we have to do is stop. I wish I was talented in something like you. That's sweet of you to say. Great songs. Thank you, Mystic. I appreciate that. Yeah, I love playing soccer. Kind of heart-aching. I'll never be a pro in it. I'm just an average player. Average gets you nowhere, sadly. Yeah. And what's wrong? And so what's so wrong with just playing soccer? Right? An incredible song, John, but you are wrong. I don't think we can do it. We can't save this fireball of planet. We're not the ones that are going to save it. We're the ones causing the problem. We're not the ones that are going to save it. The earth is more than capable of saving itself. The question is whether or not we're going to be destroyed first or not. That's the only question that matters. Like, the earth is going to be fine. The earth created life. The earth created this garden. The earth created all that you see before you. The earth created it. We aren't responsible for any of it. The question isn't, will we save the planet? The question is, will we save ourselves? And how do we save ourselves? By putting down our weapons and ceasing the fight. And I know lots of people are going to hear that and think that that's a simple solution. And guess what? It is. It is a simple solution. And that's how degenerate we are as a people. That we can't even manage the simplest of things. Stop polluting. Punish those who do. Incarcerate those who lied to us. Acknowledge the overwhelming power of the planet. Repent. Just stop. A boy in a shopping cart. Have I been muted? No, you probably just came in, bud, and then started to say. You probably came in and started to say some real controversial shit. You were probably all like, "I'm gonna say something. And it's gonna blow his brain away." How you doing, bud? Good to see you. This might get me demonetized, but I've been wanting to play this song for a little while now on the stream. This is I'll probably cut this out of the recording. This is a John Denver tune that I heard somebody play at the open mic night, and since then it's been caught in my heart, and so I want to play it. You fill up my senses like a night in the forest, like the mountains in springtime, like a walk in the rain, like a storm in the desert, like a sleepy blue ocean. You fill up my senses, come fill me again. Come, let me love you, let me give my life to you. Let me drown in your laughter, let me die in your arms. Let me lay down beside you, let me always be with you. Come, let me love you, come love me again. You fill up my senses like a night in the forest, like the mountains in springtime, like a walk in the rain, like a storm in the desert, like a sleepy blue ocean. You fill up my senses, come fill me again. That's Annie's song by John Denver. That's a beautiful one. That's a beautiful one. John Denver, man. He was tapped into something, man. He was tapped into something. A real treasure, a real blessing, a real gift. Why do we need all that stuff and then like a gazillion more spatulas and other crap? We make too much. Doesn't mean we need to stop making all those different gadgets, but maybe we should pull back on the frequency they're produced. I'm more or less of the opinion that we should make hard rules about what does get produced. Like, and like, we should probably be talking more openly about whether or not some of these technologies are good, right? And asking ourselves, like, but we don't ask ourselves those serious questions in regards to like very, very serious things. Like, why do we have nuclear bombs, right? Like, is it good that we have these nuclear bombs looming around us, right? I was just a little boy when my mom and dad divorced. Through my tantrums, cried my tears, I'd keep their vows by force. Now that I'm an older man, I see it had to be this way. My love for them, it keeps on growing each and every day. Time passed me by so swiftly, I could have been a better man. And every day I'm trying to do the best things that I can. And though they're not the people that I expected they would be, I love them all the same. I just want them to be free. For 10 years, me and my wife, we traveled round the globe. Hard times and shared regrets, they filled our lives with hope. Then one day she tells me that a man is not for her. Those 10 years are a memory now, but my love for her still stirs. Time passed me by so swiftly, I could have been a better man. And every day I'm trying to do the best things that I can. And though she's not the person that I expected her to be, I love her all the same. I just want her to be free. My love had a little girl, a scrappy tomboy type. I watched her blossom like a flower, but she felt not quite right. Then one day she tells me she's a young man, not a girl. I picked her up and held her close, then sent my son into the world. And time passed me by so swiftly, I could have been a better man. And every day I'm trying to do the best things that I can. And though he's not the person I expected he would be, well, I love him all the same. I just want him to be free. And though they're not the people that I expected they would be, well, I love them all the same. I just want them to be free. What song is this one? That's my song, Compton. I don't play it that often. I do think that if this song was played by Willie Nelson at the Grand Ole Opry, I think that it would have a very healing effect. I think that's what we need right now, you know, more than anything. And what I'm steadily beginning to realize is that the world doesn't need our rage. There's enough rage. We're just another element of the rage. And the capitalist death cult knows exactly what to do with the rage. It knows exactly how to handle the rage. What it doesn't know what to do with is the love. It doesn't know how to handle that. It doesn't know how to handle healing. It doesn't know how to handle solidarity. It doesn't know how to handle a society that finds unity and peace with itself. And I've been thinking a lot more about that recently. Because a lot of my songs come from a place of rage. And I think they're good. I think there's good music there. But I always end up walking away from those songs feeling worse. They don't have the catharsis that I'm looking for myself, and I don't think they provide the catharsis for the listener any longer. I'll probably still play them from time to time, of course. But we should be spreading love. We should be spreading love, and we should be spreading compassion, and we should be actually attempting to make the place a better place. I heard it once before, and I wanted to cry. I'm at work. We're trying really hard not to cry. Huh, Cotton? I got you. I got you. That's probably the greatest compliment that an artist can receive, you know? It's probably the greatest compliment that an artist can receive. Oh, you know what song, though, I think it kind of hits that rage place, but it's not. I think it'd actually do really, really well. I need to memorize this one, is what I need to do. Which is, come on. Oh, that's a fun one, actually. I should... Oh, come on. Yeah, there it is. There it is. Yeah. This is my ode to capitalism. This place is bubbling over, your money you can keep. I'd rather while away my days dying in the streets than spend another moment sucking up to you. You can take this job, put it up your ass, and this is what you'll do. Get fucked. Get fucked. I didn't want this goddamn job anyway. Get fucked. Get fucked. You fucked around and found out. Go away. Just go and get a job that doesn't pay the rent. Go get an education and drown in all your debt. The billionaires don't give a damn how hard they're screwing you. So let's all send a message and tell them what to do. Get fucked. Get fucked. I didn't want this goddamn job anyway. Get fucked. Get fucked. You fucked around and found out. Go away. We're all in this together as long as you do all the work. Slave away your better days to make money for some jerk. This deal ain't no kind of life, it makes me wanna scream. Let's round these motherfuckers up and get the guillotines. Get fucked. Get fucked. I didn't want this goddamn job anyway. Get fucked. Get fucked. You fucked around and found out. Go away. Oh, thank you, Generation. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I lost my pick halfway through it. Where'd it go? Oh, well, I'll find it. I'll find it. Gonna have to start panhandling, bud. Yep. I've been there, man. I've been there. Right? It's, you know, we're not exactly supporting one another in serious ways, you know? That's the truth of it. That's the truth of it. Like, do your best, bud. Do your best. I love you anyway. You know? I think that's all that can be said. You know? There's a great deal of shame. There's a great deal of shame and disappointment and anger that comes when that kind of thing starts to happen to you. Right? And I'm just here to tell you, I don't disrespect you. I respect what you need to do. And if that's what you need to do, that's what you need to do. And I love you anyway. I don't think worse of you. And I know that there are people who will. Just know, there's one person out there that doesn't. And in fact, I understand it. You got to do what you got to do, bud. You got to do what you got to do. Man. Bless you, Nut Milk. Bless you. Good opportunity, guys. Tell people I exist, right? Like, share, subscribe, send it about. God help me, man. God help me. Like, I gotta bring this shit back up again. I gotta bring this shit back up again. It's unbelievable to me. And I gotta be more honest about, like, so what this puts us in, right? Let's look at this again, right? You got the left mainly believing in the media, with the right being more skeptical. Like, this puts us in a very narrow minority, which is that we are leftists who don't trust the media. Like, we're in this narrow group here, this 39%, because I assume most of us aren't voting liberal. NDP probably, or Green Party. Like, it's a tough position to be in, right? To be on the left, 31% on the left, who actually find more in common with the conservative side of the conversation, with the right wing on this particular issue, which is how little we trust our media. It's sobering. It's sobering is what it is. Because my natural inclination is to go out and be full of bravado and bluster, right? And we just can't. We just can't. You know? The way forward is with humility. The way forward is with compassion, is steadily, slowly, gently, delicately. And like nationally, 44% don't trust, 56% do. Like, what the fuck? Why? I just can't get over it. I just can't get over it. Okay, guys, I hate to do this to you. I gotta do the chair stream for just a minute. What happens when I only drink coffee? What happens when I only drink coffee? For those of you who stayed, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Hope you guys are doing well out there. Hope you guys are doing well out there, man. What a strange world we live in, right? What a strange world we live in. Having the conversation about I mean, I don't care about any of this. Like, this is just like, let's do the rapid fire, let's clear it out, right? Like, the World Bank says most countries are headed for a recession. Yeah, we know, right? It's going to be worse. Mike Pompeo summoned by Spanish court to explain Assange assassination plot, right? The CIA trying to assassinate Julian Assange, right? Like, yeah, we live in a free society, right? Like, everything's free and open. We can believe our media, right? We're just trying to assassinate journalists. No issue here, right? The war in Ukraine has Canadian mining companies looking to Africa. Yeah, Canadian mining companies looking to destroy more shit, right? Classic. The problem with selling Russian assets for Ukraine. Yeah, no shit. I love this one. How will American oligarchs keep control? The answer is fascism. Let's this one actually I might actually read. Let's see what the conclusion is though. So how will our oligarchs do it? Maintain control while impoverishing the governed? There's only one answer: by ending the republic, both its fact and pretense. There may be other ways, but I can't think of them. Yeah. Fascism, right? Straight up, just fascism. Which, like, get ready for it. Like, get ready for it. Like, the oligarchy doesn't give a shit about democracy. Like, it doesn't give a fuck about it at all. And it's completely incompatible, right? Yeah, my boyfriend is a big liberal and proud of being a liberal, unbelievable. And I had to put my foot down about China with him and tell him I don't ever want to talk international politics with him ever. He believes anything said about China. But he's a wonderful progressive and it just sucks. So being a leftist that doesn't trust the media, just, oh God. Yeah. Right? Like, it's pretty astounding to see that, like I think about Ukraine. Ukraine's a great example, right? That, like, the narrative that the United States funds a far right section of the society in order, and arms them and trains them in order to foment a coup against the government, right? Like, not only is that the most believable narrative, it's the most factually true, right? Like, it would be more shocking if the United States didn't operate that way in a country, right? If the narrative was, yeah, the United States went in there and made a trade deal with the country and then honored that trade agreement and worked with the socialist government there and accepted a slightly lower profit margin in order to ensure the safety and well-being of the people living in the country. Like, that narrative sounds absolutely nothing like what the Americans do, right? That's the crazy narrative, right? And so anybody can believe, and we can see it, like, take a look at Libya, take a look at Iraq, take a look at Afghanistan, take a look at all throughout South America, take a look at Africa, take a look at all these places, right? That the American narrative is fund far-right groups, foment a coup against the government, install your own leadership in order to pursue your own objectives, which is usually steal resources, right? But if you take that narrative and then put it in Ukraine, people shut right down. People shut right down. They simply refuse to believe that it's the case. And there just does come a point where you have to admit, you've got to admit that the reason why they shut down is because they refuse to believe that white people would do that to other white people. That's unfortunately, that's the only conclusion that I can draw. Like, why is it that when we talk about Libya or Iraq or Afghanistan or South America or Africa or Southeast Asia or, like, any of these places, the narrative is completely believable? Because the narrative is a white power structure dominating non-white people, which that's what America has always done, right? But the second it's America doing the same thing to white people, oh, it can't be believed, right? No, can't be believed, can't be understood. Right? And I just think it's denialism. It's just delusion at this point. I shouldn't say delusion. I think it is just denial, right? That, like, you can't, and we see the pattern of grief, right? What is it? It's denial, bargaining. What are the 5 stages of grief? The stages of grief, which aren't exactly accurate, but it is. Yeah, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Right? So, and Mystic, this is for you too. If you're still in the chat talking about depression, right? If you're depressed, it's because you're going through a grieving process, and what you are grieving is the death of your own ego and the death of your own avatar. That's what you're grieving. You'll accept it soon enough. So, denial. And then, so we got a lot of denial about Ukraine, certainly a lot of anger. I was essentially banned everywhere, right, for producing Ottawa Citizen articles. Bargaining, well, there are Nazis everywhere, right? Oh, everybody's got some Nazis, right? Depression, just shut up about it, don't talk about it, right? And then finally, acceptance. I really do think that it is just, like, it's too much for most people. I think the Nazi element is the element that makes it too much. Because it's one thing to live in a society where you accept that we're blowing up brown people, right? And like, there's ISIS and Al-Qaeda and all these kind of things. But it's another to realize, like, oh, we're literally funding Nazis. Like, that's literally what we're doing, right? Because, like, one can be kind of hand waved away in a sense, but the other one really hits you in your propagandized core. Like growing up, I was taught that Nazis were fodder. You could just kill a Nazi, and people would be like, "Good for you, son. If you fucking killed a Nazi." Like I remember watching Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones walking around just shooting Nazis, right? He just didn't give a fuck. He was like, Nazis, whatever. Who gives a fuck? Boom, 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 right? And everybody in the audience was like, "Yeah, kill those fucking Nazis." Like, who gives a shit? Right? Nazis were just the like ubiquitous evil that you were completely allowed to murder. Like if you saw a Nazi, you could just be like, boom. Like, so how do you square this circle if you're a liberal who believes your media for no reason? Like the shocking amount, and my absolute favorite, dude. I gotta tell you, when it comes to the Ukrainian thing, I bring this up all. I'm probably gonna Globe and Mail. Yes, there are Nazis in Ukraine. Did they bury it? They for sure buried it. Oh. Is this the same article? Yes, this is the same article that was published. Oh, yeah, okay, good. I love this article because it's like such complete hand waving. Like it's so totally just like, sure, there are Nazis elected to the parliament. Like, sure, but there's only a few, right? Sure, Zelensky banned all left-wing organizations, but there's only a couple of Nazis, guys. Come on. So they like literally are admitting it, while simultaneously saying, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. Right? Ukraine is home to Svobia, arguably Europe's most influential far-right movement today. Party leader Ole Tyonbok is on record complaining that his country is controlled by a Muscovite Jewish mafia, while his deputy derided the Ukrainian-born film star Mila Kunis as a dirty Jewess. In Svoboda's eyes, gays are perverts and black people unfit to represent the nation at Eurovision, lest viewers come away thinking Ukraine is somewhere besides Uganda. Like, today it holds a larger chunk of its nation's ministry, nearly a quarter, including the prized defense portfolio, than any other far-right party on the continent. Ukraine's deputy prime minister represents Svoboda. The smaller, yet more extreme right sector coalition fills the deputy National Security Council chair, right sector being an explicit Nazi organization, as does the prosecutor general and the deputy chair of parliament, where the party is the fourth largest. And Svoboda's fresh faces are scarcely different from the old. One of its freshman members of parliament is the founder of the Joseph Goebbels Political Research Center, and has hailed the Holocaust as a bright period in human history. When the Ukraine crisis first broke in November, however, Western officialdom found itself in the dark. Oh, I didn't know. At the end of the Cold War has occasioned a sharp drop in governmental interest in the Soviet successor states, such as Michael McFaul, a Russian scholar and former U.S. ambassador to Moscow, recently observed. Team America is batting with a considerably shorter bench. So literally, we just didn't know. We didn't know about the Nazis, you guys. We just didn't know. Nowhere has the dearth of nuance been more apparent than the Ukraine crisis. In December, shortly after protests began after Ukraine's pro-Russian president Viktor Yanukovych, U.S. Senator John McCain shared a platform and embraced with the Svoboda chief Tyranobok at a rally in Kiev, assuring demonstrator, the free world is with you, America's with you. So literally John McCain standing with the Nazis, right? In February of this year, France and Germany oversaw a peace deal between Tyranobok, two other opposition leaders, and Yanukovych, though soon after, protests forced Yanukovych to flee Russia, right? It's called a coup. And in early March, the U.S. State Department published a debunking of Putin's false claims about Ukraine, assuring Americans the far right are not represented in parliament, although they explicitly are. Western commentators have done a little better. When Liz Wall, an anchor for the Kremlin-funded TV network RT America, quit on air on March 5th, she was feted for her bravery, granted an extended interview with CNN's Anderson Cooper. She explained her decision by recounting her disgust at the network, painting the opposition. My favorite, like, so look, this moment right here, Abby Martin did a whole breakdown of this, right? Liz Wall, an anchor for the Kremlin-funded TV network, RT America, quit. She literally was like, yeah, this is CIA op. Like, and here they are, even as they're admitting, yeah, there's Nazis, bro. There's Nazis in the parliament, right? Like, just as they're admitting that, at the same time, yeah, the CIA PSYOP, we're just going to unquestionably republic, or unquestionably publish. Meanwhile, the lead up to the March 16th referendum on Crimea's annexation to Russia, Svoboda was busier than ever. One of its chief demands, that all government business be done in Ukrainian, was passed into law, making it instantaneously marginalizing 1/3 of Ukrainian citizens and 60% of Crimeans who speak Russian. Then, for good measure, the party launched a push to repeal a law against excusing the crimes of fascism. Then, for good measure, the party launched a push to repeal a law against excusing the crimes of fascism. Normal, normal, normal society, normal society, normal, normal, normal society. Can you imagine if the conservatives did this? Can you imagine if even the PPC talked this way? Like, meanwhile, no, I already said this. So, is Ukraine poised for a Nazi push? The good news is that opinion polls show Tiny Buck at just 5% approval. Oh, good, the Nazis have the same amount of approval as the PPC do, except they hold considerably more power, right? They've got more seats. They're actually in parliament, right? Far behind Vitaly Klitschko, blah, blah, blah. In fact, it was the same French and German-backed peace deal that gave Svoboda its disproportionate share of the resulting government's ministries. Right, so 5% approval, but they've got all the ministries. How are they doing that? Because they're Nazis. They take it. Western governments then are at least partially complicit in facilitating Svoboda's rise. In the short term, they will have to be more discerning about which members of the Ukrainian leadership they engage, backing only those who genuinely blah, 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 blah. So in the end, right, oopsies, just like with the Iraq War, right, just like with all that, it's oopsie doodles. We didn't realize there were so many Nazis. Yeah, you did. Like, yeah, you fucking did. Right? Like, yeah, you did. I'm definitely saving this one. Can we talk about people flying Ukrainian flags like the Freedom Convoy supporters fly the Canadian flag? It's just like, ugh. Yeah. Well, and I've seen videos of, like, Ukrainian supporters in New York outright explicitly shouting Azov, right? And they know who Azov is. They're aware, right? Like, we shouldn't pretend. Like, nobody is being like, what? Azov isn't Nazis. Yeah, they pretty clearly, obviously are. I was going to gloat when Russia wins and rub liberals' nose in it, but now I'm too tired to enjoy vindication. Yeah. No, I mean, but this is the thing, Content, about this whole thing is, like, it's not a victory, you know? Like, when Russia wins, I'm not going to be like, rah, rah, hooray, right? I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy that all of this happened, right? I just think that we need to be accurate about understanding whose war this actually was, right? This wasn't Russia's war, right? This is the Americans' war, just another American conflict. The only reason that this one was more notable and the only reason why the citizens of the West actually sat up is because Russia got involved, right? Because Russia had to get involved. It couldn't do anything else, right? The Ukrainians burned a wooden Orthodox church in Lugansk built in the 1500s recently. Yeah, wonder if people, if we told them, would believe that the Ukrainians have claimed us as Russians. But like everyone from the area said it was them, yeah. Singh asked about grocery prices in the House yesterday, and a bunch of MPs laughed at him. Yep. Just welcome to the decline, man. But Zelensky is a Jew! Yeah. Okay, so how can Americans minimize the Nazi presence in Ukraine and then yet understand the terror of just 7 people who are far, far right? Just a few bad apples, yeah? Yeah, exactly. You should look at the Time article where they talk about Azov is changing their logo because of Russian propaganda. Oh my god. Like, this is the weirdest thing about it, right? Is that people are like literally like, yeah, the Azov Battalion is Nazis and they are part of the military, but that's not a Nazi country. Like, the apologetics is amazing. Time magazine, Azov changing their logo. I don't know if I've got the article in front of me, dude. Yeah, I don't have the article in front of me. But, like, we are still in the denial stage. Denial with a bit of anger. And that anger is directed at the messenger, right? And then the bargaining, right? Oh, there's Nazis everywhere, right? Depression and acceptance. Soon to follow. Not after a good McCarthyian period, though. Not after a real healthy McCarthyian period. And yeah, I am struggling with, like, the personal aspect of it, right? Like, encountering, like, my own family's inability or unwillingness to engage in a counter-narrative from the mainstream is pretty eye-opening, right? And you realize, like, oh, people actually do believe. Like, yeah, people actually do believe the media. Shocking. Like, the media is a mouthpiece of the death cult, exclusively. There isn't a single aspect of the media apparatus that exists outside of the death cult. Like, it's either owned by oligarchs directly, right? You're looking at National Post, you're looking at Toronto Star, or you're looking at the Globe and Mail, right? Straight up just owned by the richest people in the society, just the oligarch class. Of course they're going to control the narrative. Like, of course they're going to lie to you about what's happening in the world, right? And then the other apparati are state propaganda. And when the politicians are owned by the oligarchs, what do you think you're going to get? Right? So you're just getting like one homogenous narrative, right? Where any time, because to maintain any kind of credibility at all, they actually do have to report on facts, right? Like that, how the Ottawa Citizen continuously reports on the neo-Nazis that we've been funding, right? But those stories get buried, right? Because the strategy now is just create confusion, right? Just bombard people with so much information that it's impossible for them to sift through and actually find the counter narratives. Eric, posting. You posted in the wrong spot, Eric. That's negative 5 points from Gryffindor. Just fucking with you, dude. Azov Battalion drops neo-Nazi symbol exploited by Russian propagandists. Listen to this title. Like, listen to it. Oh, it's so fucking stupid. Listen to this title. Like, how does anybody trust their media with titles like this? Azov Battalion drops neo-Nazi symbol exploited by Russian propagandists. It's the Russian propagandists, guys. The Russian propagandists are taking advantage of these innocent neo-Nazis. Like, fuck you. The Azov Battalion has removed a neo-Nazi symbol from its insignia that has helped perpetrate Russian propaganda about Ukraine being in the grip of far-right nationalism. At the unveiling of a new Special Forces unit in Kharkiv, patches handed to soldiers did not feature the Wolf's Angel, a medieval German symbol that was adopted by the Nazis and which has been used by the battalion since 2014. Instead, they feature a golden trident, a Ukrainian national symbol worn by other regiments. On the same principles, blah, blah, blah. So, I bet you the golden trident is Ukrainian symbols golden trident. Oh, it's the coat of arms. All right, all right. No, you can't really shit on this. Like literally, like the insignia derives from the seal trident of Vladimir, the first Grand Prince of Kiev, right? Like that's ancient shit. Like that's just ancient shit right there. So yeah, they're doing what they can to slink away into the shadows, right? Just normalize themselves, right? They can no longer be explicitly Nazi in their insignias, right? That they'll just slink away into the shadows, right? Exploited by Russian propagandists. Oh, how dare those Russian propagandists point out that there are neo-Nazis, openly and flagrantly showing that they're neo-Nazis in the Ukrainian military. Like, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Oh, it's embarrassing, dude. Like, it's so fucking embarrassing. Like, so how can Americans minimize the Nazi presence in Ukraine and then yet understand the terror of just 7 people who are far, far right? Like, Americans can't grapple with the reality of why there are mass shootings in their society, right? They're not grappling with reality at all. Like, they're not living in a state of reality. They're just letting it ride, right? And I mean, of course, they're letting it ride. Most leftists think their media is telling them the truth. Like, where's the leftist movement? Gullibly absorbing the mainstream media narrative and being like, "Yep, that's accurate. That's completely accurate. Yep. Stand with Ukraine. Stand with Ukraine." Right? It's fucking embarrassing, man. Like, it's fucking embarrassing that this is the case. Like, what a sobering moment. What a sobering moment. Like, if you don't think that this is extremely serious, this is like the new platform. This is the new position that we operate from. Because, like, yikes. Like, yikes. Yikes. You can't have a leftist movement under these circumstances. Like, we talk about, I talk about how the NDP is not naming names, right? Of course the NDP is not naming names. Most people are just like, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. And this is what's so crazy about this, is that it's leftists who are standing up and saying the problem is capitalism. Right? The problem is capitalism. The problem is capitalism. But the capitalists are certainly telling us the truth. Like, how do you square this circle? What the fuck is going on there? Yep, capitalism's such a problem. We got to do something about capitalism. Absolutely. But definitely the capitalist-owned media is telling us the truth. That's what's being said to me right now. Don't trust capitalism. Capitalists always lie. They're always doing negative things. It's all just for the money and all of that kind of stuff. But the media that they own is definitely trustworthy. What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck are you talking about? Holy shit. Okay. Okay, if you say so, guys. If you say so. Well, I've run out of articles, if it can be believed, right? It happens occasionally. Like, I got 15 minutes left on the clock. Have I actually, for once, run out of things to talk about? Has it actually occurred? I am looking forward. Like, I am going back home to Manitoba for the first time in several years, and there's going to be a big family gathering there. And I'm looking forward to interacting with my family, but I know that the best thing for me to do is just kind of shut up about everything, right? Is to just shut up about everything. And what's kind of sad, and I know it's true, is that my family doesn't really respect what I'm doing. That's what's sad. Like, I'm glad that you guys are here. I'm glad that I'm doing what I'm doing. I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted a YouTube channel. I've always wanted to do this. This is what I want to be doing with my time. But it's kind of sad to know that my family doesn't really understand why I'm doing it and doesn't really support what I'm doing, right? Like, they support me, they love me, but they don't really get what's going on with this. When I'm standing here being like, look, someone's got to try to tell the truth. Someone's got to look at these capitalists and be like, probably not, and create a counter narrative. And you don't need to agree with that counter narrative, right? But if you don't even tolerate the existence of the counter narrative, well, then you're just affirming my overarching point, right? Any advice on finding and joining an organization? You can try Socialist Action. I'm always surprised about who Socialist Action has in all kinds of places. Send them an email. That's socialistaction.ca, right? They're easy to find. They're good people. Yeah, Socialist Action CA. They're good people, right? They're always working. They're always gathering. Another good organization to try would be Fight Back. That's Marxist.ca. Another organization that I'm always surprised where those people pop up. You could try them. There's also the Extinction Rebellion. They're up and down and all around, of course, doing all kinds of stuff. And then, of course, there's just simply like your local reading groups. There's just like local. There's always some kind of local thing. Don't shit on the churches in this regard, right? Forget about the religion, right? Just focus on the community gathering part of it, right? Look, there are organizations in your society that hold weekly meetings. They're called churches, right? And it's if you're looking for people, they're around. It's just finding them, and you don't need to get married to anybody, right? You don't need to get married to any of this. But I do think that everybody should be reaching out and trying to get connected to some kind of group somehow, especially a group that's outside of the political system, because the political system has widely abandoned us and likely will be seeking to dismantle these systems anyway, right? That we're likely going to have a period that is non-democratic. So organize locally, get with your local people, go enforce, and my opinion, steadily more and more is being stop. Don't ask for permission, just do things. Make them stop you. That's becoming my opinion, right? If you think like, hey, I should make this place into a garden, like, who can I talk to start gardening in this place? Don't. Just do it. Make them stop you, right? And honestly, if enough of us start acting in this way, right, become ungovernable, right? If enough people start acting in this way, they won't be able to govern us. And to me, this is going to be the path. Like, watch what happens to these guys. Watch what happens to these guys when, to these dummies, when the whole place goes conservative. When the government is conservative, when the provincial governments are largely conservative, right? You're going to see a lot of these leftists suddenly be like, wait a minute, I don't think this media is telling us the truth, right? And then it'll invert. It'll flip, right? These guys will suddenly be, their trust for media will be up here. These guys will be way down here, right? That's how it's going to go. And so we need to be here, ready to catch them, right? Ready to catch them. Ready to start being disruptive, because that's what we need to be doing. Is we need to be disruptive. We can't simply march quietly to the end, right? Which is obviously where we're heading, but pretty straightforwardly. Like, what the way that things have gone in places like Ukraine, that is how it's going to go down here. Right? The more we learn and the more we understand about the decline of the neoliberal project in places like Ukraine or even Chile, right? All across South America, all this, right? The more we learn about those places, the more we are going to understand what's happening in our own society. That the oligarchs are taking over, they're delegitimizing the democracy, that it is up to the citizens to reorganize and erect a new system because the old system has been delegitimized. Right? This is what the Chavistas did, by the way. Like, this is what Hugo Chavez did. He just erected a new system and said, fuck your old bullshit. Because it didn't work. It wasn't working. It was corrupted. It wasn't working on behalf of the citizens at all. Right? We're going to have to do the same thing. But to convince these gullible liberals who call themselves leftists, we're going to have to go through a period of pretty extreme pain. It's going to be pretty extreme, if you ask me. Like, here in Canada, we are going to have to see, like, the privatization of the healthcare system, which is going to happen. Like, I don't think we should pretend otherwise. Like, the people who are ruling this place are rapacious and extremely, extremely greedy. Like, their greed knows no bounds. And they're not capable of planning. Like, really. They've admitted it. Like, they've said straight out, like, we don't create a plan. Like, who cares if this happens in 100 years? Oh, Barnabas, that's quite all right. Good to see you. Good to see you nonetheless. I'm so glad you're all here, you know? I really am. I'm so glad you all are here. It's so nice to know that there are like-minded people in the world. It's so nice to know that there are people who are trying their best, who are doing their best, who are fighting the good fight, who are cutting through the bullshit. Yeah, the free market is going to solve itself. Yep, the trouble with that is that sometimes the free market solutions is just kill the Jews, right? That's a good free market decision. Yeah, well, the free market's going to solve itself by rounding up the Jews and incarcerate and putting them in ovens, right? Free market solutions, right? That was called the permanent solution, right? So, like, it's astounding that we live, and I'm always constantly blown away. Humans have this enormous gift, and it's a gift. There's no other way to describe it. You could call it a curse as well, but it's both. It's a gift and a curse. We have the ability to enter the abstract space, and then articulate what we think about in the abstract space. And then we have the tools necessary to interact with the world enough to actually manifest what we think about in the abstract space. So we have these amazing combination of gifts that are required to actually manifest things into the world and to actually do things in the world. And we're told, don't use it. That's what we're being told. Right? We have the ability to imagine a completely different way of being. We have the ability to imagine a completely different set of rules. Right? We have the ability to enter the abstract space together, collectively. We can do that. Right? We have, and it's completely possible that there are other animals that can enter the abstract space of imagination, but they don't have the ability to articulate what they find there, right? They lack the capacity to actually communicate to one another in a way that makes sense, so they can't enter the collective. They can't enter it collectively, right? There's no collective consciousness in regards to entering of this abstract space. But we have it. We've got both. And then we have thumbs. We've got opposable thumbs, so we can literally grab things and make changes to the world around us easily. And we're just told straight up, don't use it. The free market will decide. And when you start talking about this concept of the free market, it's no different than a god. It's just a god. The free market will move and it will decide and make decisions on your behalf. You cannot make decisions for yourself. The free market will make those decisions. And in the end, it's just let chaos reign. And that's exactly what we're getting. We're just getting total chaos. And we're not actually entering the abstract space, communicating with one another, entering the collective space, coming up with new ideas, and then attempting to manifest those into the real world, because that would be planning. And we live in a society that literally denigrates the concept of planning, right? Like, they spit on the concept of, like, oh, the Chinese have a 5-year plan. Isn't that terrible? What are you talking about? The Chinese have been massively successful. Like, massively successful. I think about what you said earlier, Compton, right? How your boy is sitting there being like, he thinks, he believes everything that comes out of the mainstream media in regards to China. Like, what an embarrassing position to take. Like, the successes of the Chinese government are massive and obvious. And, like, overwhelmingly so. Like, overwhelmingly. To deny that the Chinese have not been massively successful by planning, it's just living in a dream world. Like, one that really makes me, like, seriously, I'm like, oh, okay, like, your opinion on things is, I've just got a color in this way, because, like, you can't see, like, real facts in front of you. Okay. I hope all of you are doing well out there, you know. I'm going to miss all of you while I'm out at Manitoba. Right? It's only a couple of days. Like, it's only Thursday and it's only Monday, but I think about you guys a lot, you know. I hope each and every one of you is doing well out there. We are heading for dark days. And I hope that we're able to stay in contact with one another and stay in touch with one another. I hope that I don't get removed from YouTube. I hope that I'm able to keep this thing going. I hope that there aren't barriers that are put in my way in that regard. Although my own life's history has taught me very strongly that anytime I try to build anything, capitalism gets in my way and destroys it. That's a common thread throughout my life. And so I don't see why this should be any different. Although I will say this has been the most rewarding. This has definitely been the most rewarding of all of the endeavors I've attempted to make. Because this is the first time that I've actually stood up and spoken from my heart and had any kind of reward for doing so, which is that the capitalist system is a failure. It simply doesn't work. Like, it's not an ideology. It's not a belief system. It's just the acknowledgement that in very real and tangible ways, when you actually live in reality and you analyze reality for what it is, and you spend time dwelling in the nightmare, you can come out of it saying, just in a very practical way, structurally speaking, it simply doesn't work. It can't generate peace. It can't stop war. Anything it builds, it does so by extracting wealth from one group for the benefit of another group. It is, at its core, a system that generates chaos by design and on purpose. And I've always understood this. I've always talked this way. And hopefully, I'll be able to get into a position where I actually get paid to actually say this and to actually talk this way and to actually inform people more and more of what the structure of the society actually looks like. So, please guys, like, share, and subscribe. Let people know I exist. That's the most important part. Right? If you've got a friend that's looking for a podcast, if you've got a friend that's looking for another voice, if you've got something going on, and you're thinking, well, tell them about me. Tell your boyfriends and your girlfriends and your moms and your dads and and your buds at the pub and all of this kind of stuff. Let them know I exist. And send them in here. Send them in here. Because this is the best part, if you ask me. Major, good to see you. You have a good night too, bud. This is the best part, is talking to you guys. Talking to you guys is without a doubt the best part of this whole arrangement. All right, guys. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being living in quantum energy. The billionaire class is spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes that you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.